Yeah, got a rental for the next 6 months, and then
No, she's
Do you have rent a place?
mhm.
Oh, okay.
and then I'll
Brian,
find
actually,
a
Brian's
place to
gonna,
buy.
he
Once,
screenshots the,
once I've scouted a little bit more,
Get 'em that
and
way.
once the wife has had appropriate input.
I'll grab some just in case.
Hi.
Okay, good evening, folks. I'd like to introduce you to our workshop. Today is July 20th, 2020. First on the agenda would be the Court Street Study. We have Deputy Director of Economic Development, Eric Cousins, in chambers, and presentation. I'll turn the floor over to you, Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tom, can you hear us on the phone?
I can hear you well, Eric. Mr. Mayor, not so much.
Tom, can you just try to speak one more time, make sure we can hear you? Hello?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have Tom Errico from TY Lin on the line. As you know, we've been working on a study for improvements to Court Street, right out in front of City Hall here. A number of years ago, the council took an interest in trying to narrow the lanes out there. That approach wasn't accepted by Maine Department of Transportation, so we've worked for a couple of years now to try to line up funding to do a more thoughtful study of the conditions on Court Street and engage the public in how we might make some of the improvements towards the goals that the council had identified at that time. Tom Errico of TY Lin is a traffic engineer that's done a lot of work in this area. He was our consultant for this study. He's on the line to go through the major findings and recommendations of this study. When we set out, the objectives of the study were to make bicycle, pedestrian, and parking improvements along Court Street between the Androscoggin River and Goff Street, and Turner Street between Court Street and Hampshire Street, while addressing area congestion management. Tom will give you an overview of the findings, and we had a very well-attended public process that I think resulted in some meaningful recommendations that hopefully you'll be pleased to implement over the coming years. Tom, go ahead.
So Eric, I don't know, do you have a graphic that you're going to be presenting, or you just want me to walk through?
So I have the study here, and I could flip to any page that you wanted for tables.
Okay. I mean, my thought would be that I kind of go through starting at page 28, which is the beginning of the alternatives, and kind of walk through from there. And I'll try to keep this as brief as possible, and allow the council opportunity to ask questions. Well, good evening. My name is Tom Errico. As Eric said, I'm a senior associate at TY Lin International in Falmouth, and been managing this study now for a little bit. And I think we do have some, I'll call some beneficial improvements that I think will improve pedestrian bicycle safety, general safety overall. I mean, there were a number at some of the public meetings. I noted that almost the entire study area is a high-class location for MDOT criteria. So on page 28, which is the next page, Eric, we looked at something called a full road dive. This is something that I think a lot of citizens and others, myself included, thought that if you were really going to find the most beneficial improvement, it would be looking at something called a road diet, where you would have basically 3 travel lanes. And so you would ultimately have one through lane in each direction, and then a center lane that would provide opportunities for turn movement. What we found was, through the modeling, we did a detailed simulation model, is that would create unreasonable congestion in the corridor. That from a delay queuing perspective, it was not feasible. What we concluded through that public process that Eric talked about, what we concluded was that, well, let's monitor conditions. We know transportation traffic volumes have changed since the pandemic, and so the recommendation is let's move towards monitoring a scenario for full road diet in the future. And so, Eric, if you can go to page 31, page 31 talks about an offset alignment. So through the process in collaboration with Maine DOT, we identified an option where you still maintain four travel lanes, but ultimately you would provide 2 lanes headed in the westbound direction, so from, say, Lewiston towards Minot Avenue, and 1 lane headed from Minot Union Street bypass to Lewiston with a turn lane. And so Eric sliding through, and so what we found was this provided reasonably acceptable operating conditions, and so we thought this was a good compromise that allowed some changes, some positive changes to the corridor from the standpoint of traffic calming, pedestrian movement, and not creating unnecessary congestion and delay. And so this really became sort of a recommendation for how do we change Court Street, and ultimately the recommendation is to conduct a demonstration project. This is something that we do quite a bit in the state, where we would test it. The DOT has a process and a method for doing so, and so we started off of Goff Street and colliding with traffic on Court Street. And so the thought would be prohibiting those left turn movements, and in essence you mitigate that pattern. You look at the magnitude of the number, there were about 50 vehicles in a peak hour that were making that left turn, and we thought that was not a significant impact in terms of diversion to other streets and improvement in safety. The Court Street, Minot Ave, Union Street intersection, we recommend removal of the right turn lane on Union Street and Minot Avenue. Right now it's a really big intersection, really difficult for pedestrians to kind of manage their ability to get across the intersection. And so we suggest removing right turn lanes, and even reduce the width of some of the lanes. The intersection was designed a number of years ago when really it was about moving traffic, not thinking about pedestrians and other modes of transportation. And so we think those two facts, those two recommendations will help to sort of right-size the intersection and provide a little sort of balance so that people don't feel like it's a barrier between destinations to downtown. Another safety problematic location is the driveway to Denny's restaurant. Eric will flip to it, but it's a graphic that shows a very distinct collision pattern. We think the drivay should be closed. Denny's has other opportunities for movement in their facility, and we think this will help to improve safety conditions on that area. The next location is Fort at Railroad Street. Currently it has a prohibition where left turns are not allowed or permitted, but vehicle motorists still do it. And so one thought would be to install bollards in the center of the road to prevent that movement. We do think it serves some circulation benefit, so full closure was not something we recommended, but physically trying to prevent those left turn movements was the recommendation. Pleasant Street crosswalk. This crosswalk from the beginning was identified through the public process, through our work, to be a very concerning crosswalk in terms of its configuration with the 4-lane cross-section. So we recommend adding flashing beacons, pavement markings, signage, and if that hybrid offset cross-section happens, a median island is a possible outcome for improving safe crossings at that location. Mechanics Road, converting Mechanics Road from a one-way roadway departing Court Street to a two-way street came up during the process. Quite frankly, it wasn't part of our scope, but it had some interesting potential benefits in terms of circulation, providing alternative routing for Main Street. It's bigger issue that the recommendation is the city and ATRC should continue to think about to be allocated to on-street parking. Turner at Hampshire Street, there are sort of two components to that location. One was right-sizing the intersection, given that there's only one lane headed to Hampshire, Great Falls Plaza from Court Street. Only a single lane is needed, so there's some sort of narrowing there. And then the approach entering Great Falls Plaza is very wide, and there's some sense that some adjustment to that curb line could be made to kind of, again, get the intersection to be a little bit more user-friendly from a pedestrian perspective, slow vehicles down. And lastly, we have similar recommendations that we talked about for the Pleasant Street crosswalk for the YMCA crosswalk, providing flashing beacons, hand signage, pavement markings as part of improving that crosswalk. Main Street at Great Falls Plaza, there are a few recommendations. One, reducing the number of lanes coming out of Great Falls Plaza to a single left-right lane. And that's partly because there aren't that many vehicles that turn right. Most motorists head towards Turner Street, opposite Hampshire Street. And then the other is tightening up the corner so that it's not a free flow movement turning into Great Falls Plaza. Longley Bridge, through this effort and the public process, it became apparent that bicycle accommodations are not provided control. That really looks to provide added efficiency within a quarter like this. And then upgrading facilities so that they are ADA compliant as part of meeting current standards. So that was a quick summary of some of the key points, and be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Do you have any questions?
Very good. We also have Jennifer Williams here from ATRC. She's in the community room to answer any questions that we might have. I'm not sure if we can bring her in now on a standby, or Phil?
I think we're okay, unless we need to.
Unless we need to. I'll open up to the council. Council, do you have any questions of Eric or Tim?
You want
Any
me to
thoughts?
step out so she can come in?
No, it's not about.
Eric, you're going to have to repeat the question for me because
I
I
will,
can't
Tom.
hear
Yep.
him.
Is there any other questions, Council Tim? Councilor McLeod?
I just had a quick question. Does this study take into account if we were to develop the downtown area as well as the Great Falls area that's currently parking lot, if that were to be built up a lot more, does this traffic pattern take account for that, for the more traffic we might have in that area?
Councilor McLeod had asked if we had taken into account a growth in the downtown over time, and did we take that traffic into account in designing the models?
Yeah, great question. And so we did. In fact, we spent quite a bit of time trying to somewhat accurately project future growth. And quite frankly, this became a comment early on in the public process that they didn't want to see an overly aggressive growth assumption, and they wanted to try to consider as many facts as possible. And so we ultimately
Overbuilding our streets so they're not places that are easy for pedestrians to cross. So there was a lot of discussion about that. We settled on the 0.5% because that's closer to what we have seen over the last 20 years or so.
Excellent.
Plus the anticipated growth on specific parcels like Great Falls Plaza.
I got a couple questions.
Well, Councilor Gary had her hand up, then we'll go Councilor Walker next. So Councilor Gary, Councilor Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In regards to closing the driveway for Denny's on Court Street, has it been taken into consideration the effect to the business if we close that off there? And then also where the muffler shop is right there, wouldn't that be just as bad of an impact during certain daytime hours if we left that open?
Tom, Councilor Gary is asking if we've taken into account, and I think I can answer this one, but I want you to be aware of the question. If we've taken into account the effect of on a business, specifically Denny's, if we close the driveway. We have not spoken with Denny's about that yet. They were mailed notices of the public meetings. I don't think anybody was there representing them. But we'll certainly have to talk to them. This study is by no means a done deal. These are recommendations that over time the council will have to decide if they want to implement. But we'll need to talk to both of those businesses before any of that happens.
And I mean, the mine shop, they've been there for quite a long time and they do a really good business. So, I mean, I don't want to do anything by changing the road that's going to affect those that have been there the longest.
Yeah, that's something that will need to be considered carefully as you decide whether or not to implement certain elements.
And one final thing is when you're talking about going into like Great Falls Plaza and reconfiguring the roads down there, have you guys taken in consideration the bus service? Our transportation goes in and out and around, and they have a certain timetable. So if we do too many things that muffs it up, they won't be able to complete the routes as established.
Councillor Gary was asking if we considered bus service in Great Falls Plaza as part of the study.
Yeah, great question. We did not specifically look at what we call turning templates for, let's say, a bus or large vehicle at some of those intersections, but the design process would do that. That would ultimately decide the geometry, the corner radii, what would be permitted to make sure those vehicles could make the movement. We did do that at Union Street Bypass and Minot Avenue as part of removal of the right turn lanes that we're suggesting, and that was a request that came from DOT. So that's one location where we specifically did that.
Councilor Walker?
Thank you. Will we see something much bigger than this in front of us soon, or are we asked to move this forward with this?
Well, what I'd like to, this is, just so we understand the schedule, I'd like staff to obviously come back. This is the first toe in the water, so to speak. Obviously, it's a big toe. Looking at different scenarios, looking at what, more importantly, can't be done versus what can be done, and eliminating those. Staff, and Eric, I'm not sure if you've worked on this yet, but coming up with potential schedule, implementation, next steps over the next 5 to 10 years, what the budgets could be for each of these sub-projects, and a lot of work after that, after we get that, will have to be done in order to coordinate with businesses to really look at the differences and what these will, and how these will all take shape over a period of time. And again, if we accept any one of them, I believe some of them are not going to be dependent upon others, so there could be some suggestions that are accepted and some that are not.
We do have more detailed intersection by intersection drawings like this that are part of the report.
Have you all talked about scheduling?
We're wrapping up this study with the consultant. That's done at this point. This will be the last part of them delivering the report to us. As far as schedule, we do have some money appropriated in this year's CIP for downtown biking ped improvements. Some of that could go towards the lowest hanging fruit. Some of the more simple crosswalk pieces in front of the YMCA is one that we heard a lot about. That's not a very expensive improvement. And we'd be looking at next year's CIP to propose other potential pieces of implementation.
Mr. Manager, when you were gone, we were just talking about kind of the schedule going forth for the council to look at individual improvements, costs associated, and schedule for build-out.
Yeah.
And obviously decision-making that would happen at each one of those steps.
And I was just speaking with Jennifer regarding ATRC funding. So just so we're clear, they're probably out to FY23 or somewhere along those lines with many projects up in the queue on this. So there really wouldn't be anything recent in the upcoming months, rather, or even the next 2 fiscal years where ATRC would be part of this, because we don't have any projects currently outlined in this area. The only other thing I want to mention, remember that because we're down here, we're not at the mics here. These mics are different, so you have to make sure you're looking right into your mic to speak. So if you're looking over at Eric, they're not picking it up. So that's what I was just out back talking to tech on. So we want to make sure everybody hears your questions. So just speaking to the mics.
Excuse me. A couple other things is they talked about the bikes coming off the bridge. I would hope there's a lot more to that because we've got too many dead ends where bikes travel at this point. So I'm hoping that we're going to see a lot more of where they're going to go and how they're going to get there. And coming off from the bypass, for instance, turning right on the Court Street, I'm hoping that they're not going to talk about narrowing that down too much. Trailer trucks cannot make that turn in down Court from south, as it is, without taking all 3 lanes that are on that Court Street section. So before I would approve any of this, I would want to see a lot more detail and maybe some cars and trucks moving on this detail, because this is way too small what we're seeing and not enough information.
Interestingly, though, the elimination of the right turn from Union onto Court and from Minot onto Court moves the tractor-trailer trucks out away from the curb a bit, and it actually it requires less turning movement on Court Street. It doesn't encroach in as many lanes as we experience now, because they're starting their turn further from the curb.
I think, obviously the sooner we can get, the low-hanging fruit, to use your term, knocked out, especially if it has to do with safety considerations, crosswalks, signage, obviously the logistics involved with timings of lights, sooner the better, and without obviously overburdening staff, but leave that to the city administration and staff to figure that out. But council, if you're all in agreement, do you want to move forward looking at some of these recommendations this fiscal year while they're working on plans for next CIP and next fiscal year? Obviously with an approval by council, but just start exploring them.
Yes.
Council, good? Okay. Very
And
good.
any of them that you don't decide to fund will not happen. So that's what it comes down to.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Tim and Eric and Jen, for being here. We appreciate your time on this.
Thank you, Tom.
Tom, I'm sorry, not Tim,
thanks.
Tom. That's embarrassing. Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda, we have a police department discussion with Chief Moen.
So Chief Mullen will be coming in. I would ask, so this was a council-sponsored workshop item. So I'd ask the sponsor on this was Councilor Milks. So Councilor Milks, if you want to start, then Chief Mullen will start his presentation.
Sure. I wanted to, given the issues that have been going on in society lately and locally, we had some things going on that affected the police and the community. And so I asked the city manager, Mr. Crowell and Jason, if they could talk about some of the things that the police department's currently doing to address, and that in discussing with them, they're already engaging and implementing some of the things that have been suggested from a national level. And so I asked them to come in and give us an update on some of the things that have been talked about out in public today, and let them know that, hey, we're behind them, and give us some updates on what it is that they're doing to engage with the community as a police department. So that was the impetus of the discussion.
Great, thanks. Chief Mullen.
Thank you, Councilor. On behalf of the men and women of the Auburn Police Department, thank you all for your support. Our staff knows that they are fully supported by council with everything that we do, and they certainly appreciate that. So tonight I want to have a conversation about what we're doing as far as our local policing practices and how they relate to things that are going on at a national level. And in the information sheet, we talked about the executive order that President Trump issued last month on safe policing. And a lot of the things that are laid out in that order we're already doing, we've been doing for over 10 years. The first item that they talked about was credentialing of police departments, and that's something that I fully support. We have been a national accreditation and really enjoyed their time here, and in November we'll be appearing before the commission for our next accreditation award. So it's important to understand that with accreditation, there's only about 5%, just under 5% in county agencies as well. So not everything applies, but overall we have to show that full compliance. And for us, what that's done is that's really solidified everything that we do, because we're taking those best national policies and practices and bringing them to Auburn, Maine, and implementing them. And we are one of the most forward-thinking agencies in the state, in my opinion. And we've also, in the last 6 months, underwent a state accreditation process. The Maine Chiefs of Police Association decided that not every agency in Maine could have the bandwidth or the resources to be able to attain a national accreditation. So the association came up with a state accreditation program. City Manager Kroll and myself were a part of that original committee to help get that accreditation program up and running. Liz Allen was the program manager for the U.S. Association for a while. So Auburn played a significant role in bringing state accreditation to the state of Maine. And right now, there are 5 agencies in the state that are accredited, us being one of them, through the state program. And with that, we've brought 162 standards for each agency to meet. And it ranges anywhere from law enforcement operations to liability, high-risk operations, selection, promotion, recruitment, things like that. So I was pleased to see that we were already in full compliance with that part of the executive order that the president issued. And another section of that executive order talked about use of force training, de-escalation techniques. All of our sworn staff recently went under 8 hours of de-escalation training last month, and that wasn't a result of what happened out in Minneapolis. That training had been scheduled for over 6 months, but getting put off because of the pandemic and whatnot, and the challenges that we had in getting that training to come here. So all of our use of force policies, they are in compliance with national, federal, state, and local guidelines. We also have what we call a personnel early warning system, where we monitor our officers' activities. We have a very comprehensive use of force reporting mechanism, where anything over simple handcuffing becomes a use of force incident that we're going to track. And by doing so, that allows us to try to identify patterns and trends that may lead to, well, is there a different way of doing things, better training that's out there? For instances, when we went to the tasers back 10 years ago, we eliminated batons. And what we found was the batons are a good prying tool. When somebody has their hands under them and they're laying on them, it's very hard to get them out. So the baton actually makes a good prying tool to be able to get that arm out from underneath them. So we reintroduced the baton as a tool to be able to get people's hands out from underneath them. And that saves them from, if somebody's being non-compliant, where they might go right to the taser, where a simple prying motion with the baton can free that hand out. So we're always analyzing our data. We're a very data-driven agency. We always have been. So we're always looking to find those patterns and trends that we can improve on, make our officers safer and whatnot. So with this early warning system, what we do is we monitor use of force incidents, cruiser accidents, personnel complaints, any discipline, excessive use of sick time. Those are all things that we monitor, and we have certain thresholds set up in each area that should they exceed that threshold, an alarm sounds. And that's then sent to the officer supervisor. They sit down with the officer, review everything that brought that alert to light, and then we determine, okay, what can we do to mitigate it? So whether it be additional training and or maybe it's just making the officer more aware of what they're doing and whatnot. So that's been an effective tool that's been in place for us since 2010. And again, when it comes to chokeholds, strangleholds, carotid holds, we've never trained for that. The use of force curriculum for the state, the training that every officer in the state goes through, that's never a part of any training. That's not simply how we do things. And when we look at our use of force practices, there's a movement out there called 8 Can't Wait. It's a new movement that addresses some of the use of force issues going on across the country. And the 8 Can't Wait, they have a number of requirements that they'd like to see agencies have. One of them being banning chokeholds and strangleholds, which we already do. A required de-escalation. We are already doing that. We employ de-escalation all the time. We have 49% of our staff has either been trained in critical intervention, crisis intervention training and or mental health first aid, where they're using those techniques that they learn to try to de-escalate somebody. Because the last thing we want to do is put hands on somebody if we don't have to. So by employing those training and techniques, we avert a lot of potential use of force scenarios because we're able to communicate with the people and are able to talk them down from their level that they're at where use of force might be required. So we're already doing the de-escalation. Another piece of the A can't wait is require warnings before shooting. That is in our policy that should deadly force be used, if the circumstances present themselves, to issue that warning first before that final use of deadly force happens. It requires exhausting all alternatives before shooting. Again, we outline in that policy, and we do that with our use of force training. We have a great relationship with the Central Maine Community College, and they have a very robust criminal justice program where they have use of force simulators. They have driving simulators they've made available to us to be able to take our staff and run them through different scenarios and work on that shoot, don't shoot type of training as well. So we're always doing situational training to make sure that our officers are fully equipped with both the equipment and the knowledge they have to be able to do the jobs properly. Duty to intervene, that's where if an officer sees another officer doing something wrong, they step in and say, hey, you know what, stop, back off, we'll take care of it. We've been doing that for years as well. Ban shooting at moving vehicles, again, that's been in place for us since at least 2007, where we've banned the shooting of vehicles. Another part of the A can't wait is require comprehensive reporting. As I said earlier, we have a comprehensive reporting process. It starts with the officer doing a use of force report. That report goes up through an entire command chain to myself, where I'm the final sign-off on every use of force. And we go through and we determine, was that use of force within policy? If it wasn't, why wasn't it? How did it happen? What can we do to prevent it from happening again? So we're always doing that command review right up the chain. It starts with the officer supervisor, the officer's lieutenant, the deputy chief, and then myself. So we're always looking at every single use of force to make sure that it was within policy. And the final one that the A can't wait have required, but we don't follow, is require a use of force continuum. We had a use of force continuum for years, where you started with the lowest form and went up through escalating as the person escalated. But the state found that that was no longer an effective way to do that, because you might not necessarily be able to start with that lowest form if somebody is really escalated. So the curriculum for the use of force training for the academy and for the state, and as well as the policies, model policies for the state, changed so that it's a more interactive situational use of force, where they're using the force that they feel is necessary to confront the situation in front of them. So overall, we're already in compliance with 7 out of the 8 requirements that this national movement is moving towards. So that puts us ahead of the curve with that. And then back in 2014, President Obama commissioned a task force on 21st century policing, and they came up with 6 pillars of law enforcement that law enforcement need to try to achieve. And the first one is building trust and legitimacy. And we're doing that on a constant basis through our community policing efforts and our efforts to be transparent with the community. Back, if you recall, when I took this job, I explained that the cornerstones of my personal philosophy were accountability, consistency, and transparency. We hold ourselves accountable to ourselves and the public, and we're consistent in how we deliver our law enforcement service to our customers. We talk a lot about customer service. We have a motto that's on the back of our cruiser that says, expect excellence. And that's our expectations for our citizens, is when they call us, they're going to get the best service possible. And we've also tried to be very transparent in everything that we do, because we're not hiding any secrets. It's when we talk to the Citizens Police Academy, we talk about, when the Citizens Police Academy starts, they're looking at all of our operations and they're learning all about the agency. So we're kind of pulling back that dark curtain with the Wizard of Oz is behind there running all the things. So they've really enjoyed that, and we get a lot of compliments from that. We run that Citizens Police Academy once a year for that. The second pillar was policy and oversight. As an accredited agency, we have over 100 policies that are in place for just about every situation that's out there. And those policies have been created using those best national policing practices. So we want to make sure that we have the proper policy and oversight for our officers. The third pillar was technology and social media. And that plays a huge part today because social media is really the mainstay of everything that we're doing now. When it comes to communications, being able to talk to people, getting our message out, it's through social media. So we've done a very good job with staff being able to get stuff out on our Facebook page, communicate with folks. We have an open dialogue consistently with Facebook Messenger with people having requests or complaints about speeding in certain areas that comes in through Facebook that we then assign out to staff to make sure that we try to mitigate those properly. And again, with technology is the use of body-worn cameras. That's going to be a future workshop topic for us to sit down and explain because it's a very comprehensive program. We've had in-car cameras for years, and with the introduction of body-worn cameras, we took the approach, let's sit back and give it a few years just to let all the bugs and stuff get worked out and what issues and technology issues are going to come up because of that. And as we move forward, building that trust and legitimacy is the expectation of body-worn cameras. The public expects it now, and that's something that I think is a need that we're going to need to fulfill at some point. Our staff is very much in favor of it because what we've found is the use of body-worn cameras is merely validating the good job that the officers are doing. And 9 times out of 10, any complaints that we get, we'll go to the car video and look at the car video. 9 times out of 10, what happened is very different than the person's recollection of it. And once they see the video, they're like, yeah, okay, we're all set. Thank you for taking the time to listen, but we've seen the video, and the video stands for itself. And video is now playing a large role in prosecution. The district attorney's office is requiring video in all of our arrests, even if it's not caught on camera. They still want the recordings from that as part of the prosecution. The challenge with body-worn cameras is there's so much data there that you have to store it. And when we go to body-worn cameras, we're going to have to look at cloud storage. And with that comes a cost. And it's expensive. It's an expensive project, but again, it's investing in our officers and their equipment and making sure that they're safe, both mentally and physically as well. The fourth pillar, community policing and crime reduction. We look at our neighborhoods watch groups. We have 6 watch groups throughout the city that are very active in meeting. And the goal with our watch group is we come in and we try to organize it, get it off the ground, and then let the residents take it over and run with it. And we've had very good success with the neighborhood watch programs. They're addressing immediate needs within those neighborhoods. We have an officer or a supervisor that's assigned to each group that acts as the liaison between the group and the department. So any issues that come up, they go to the meetings, they listen to the concerns, and then we deploy the resources out there to be able to address those concerns for them. Again, when you talk about crime reduction, you look at our data-driven policing approaches. We are very data-driven. Good example is our anti-shoplifting campaign that we did for 2019, where between 2019 and 2018, we saw a 49% reduction in our shoplifting incidents from 18 to 19 because of the campaign that we did, where we mandated a physical arrest in every shoplifting case that we responded to. And there was information going on Facebook about these arrests, and we were posting mugshot photos as well. And it was an effective tool for us. We're forecasting about a 12% decrease in our overall crime rate in 2019 versus 2018. And the reduction in shoplifting played a large role in that as well. And we talk about the community policing. You know, we did Operation Ice Cream here a few weeks ago. And I'm really proud of our officers and how that came to light. Because during some of the local protests, the officers were hearing the narrative where you can't trust the police and whatnot. And they were seeing 4-, 5-, 6-year-olds that were in the crowds repeating that mantra. And it really bothered them that, you know, this is not who we are. And they decided it was time to cool the narrative. So they got together and they actually wanted to pay for the ice cream out of their own pockets. They said, listen, this is important to us. We know funding's tight. We want to make this happen. Like, I appreciate that, but you're not going to pay for it. The department will take care of that. That's community policing 101 for us. So we went out and we hit a lot of neighborhoods throughout the cities. We handed out, I think, over 300 ice creams that day. We're going to do another one in August and try to hit some of the other neighborhoods that we didn't get to in that one day. And it's about getting out there and interacting with people. We had a blast. We had the motorcycles out escorting the ice cream truck, playing ice cream truck music over the PA system, and people came out of the woodwork to get ice cream. And it allowed us to have a simple conversation with them, and they really appreciated it. We had a good time with it. And again, with community policing and crime reduction, you look at our PAL Center. Our PAL Center was created to address the need in 1 square mile, where we had 32% of our call volume was coming from this 1 square mile within the city. So we were able to plant the PAL Center in the middle of that 1 square mile and started working with kids, because studies have shown that if you have early intervention with our kids, the likelihood for criminality as they grow older is reduced. So we've made a concentrated effort with our PAL Center. We service over 100 kids a day when we're in operation. And we're going to have a future workshop on the future of PAL as well, and how those operations can be rolled in to the rec department as well, because we run a shoestring budget with PAL, and it's a question every year if we're going to stay open or not, because there's only so much fundraising that we can do. So the program has been so successful that I think it's time for the city to start sustaining those operations and continue that growth of the PAL Center. And the things that we're doing there are amazing. They're learning life skills there that they're not going to get anywhere else. So by doing that, hopefully, we can reduce the chances of interacting with them later on in a negative way. And training and education, I harped on that throughout the budget process, where training is a priority for us, and we need to send our officers as much training as possible to give them the training, education, and experience to be able to handle certain situations. So we were able to increase the training line a little bit this year, and I want to continue to try to increase it over the years to come, because we're finding that it's vital that our officers get as much training as possible for the situations that are coming out. And then officer safety and wellness was the 6th pillar. And that's a two-edged sword, because we have to, one, deal with making sure the officers are properly equipped to be able to do the job safely. But also there's a mental health aspect to that as well, where there are just certain things you can't unsee as a police officer. And every police officer out there has some form of PTSD. We had an officer that battled PTSD a few years ago, and he was very open in public with his struggle with it, and it really changed the culture within our agency that, it's okay to talk about that. We were able to get a peer support team into place where we have 13 people that have been trained in peer support, and they're able to come alongside somebody and help them through certain issues, and get them the help and resources that they need if they can't provide it for them. So the culture of the agency has really changed when it comes to mental health for our officers, because our officers are our priority. Their safety and well-being is our #1 priority. So we need to ensure that we're doing that. And honestly, it's a hard time to be a police officer in this country right now, because we are getting painted with the same brush as what's happening in other parts of the country, where those issues just aren't happening here. What happened in Minneapolis was a murder. That never should have happened, all day long. We were able to learn from that, and this is what not to do in certain situations. So having those conversations, having those hard conversations within the organization to make sure that we have those procedures in place so it doesn't happen here, and it's not going to happen here. So the goal for today and having this conversation was, this is what we're doing, that we're trying to stay ahead of the curve in these areas. And when you look at the policies that we have in place, we do annual analysis on use of force, bias-based policing, recruitment, pursuit, our early warnings review, and active threats. Those are all high critical areas that we want to make sure that we are looking at that data to see annually, are there any changes that we need to make within the agency to make ourselves better and or more efficient and reduce our liability exposure as well. I know that across the country, SROs have become a topic of conversation, and I fully support our SRO program. We've had officers in the schools for over 40 years. It started off with Officer Friendly. It was an officer, school liaison officer, and it's rolled through and morphed into the current SRO program that we have. And one of the officers that took part of Operation Ice Cream, when he was our elementary school resource officer, he says, we need to make sure we hit this neighborhood because a lot of my kids live in that neighborhood. So our SROs are making those relationships with our kids on a daily basis. And there have been talks or questions as to why is an officer in school in full uniform where he could be wearing a polo shirt? And the honest answer is, one, you have bad people that come to school, and the officers need to have all their equipment to be able to mitigate that. But also, when you have a child that may be looking at an officer or seeing an officer arrest their parent, father, mother, for a domestic violence situation, seeing their parent being arrested by a police officer, that's going to leave a negative connotation. But when they see a police officer in uniform in the schools that they know they can walk up and talk to and establish that relationship, it kind of offsets that negative connotation that they could have. So we have 3 SROs in our school systems, and it's a very successful program that I wholeheartedly support, and I hope we don't have to have the hard conversation about removing them because they do an effective job, and it's essential to the security of our schools. I was a school resource officer for 2 years at Little High School. I still have kids that were seniors. I have 3 of them that work for me now. And I still get emails occasionally from those kids saying, hey, how are you doing? Glad to see you, and this is what I'm up to now. So those relationships that we build in the schools, they last a lifetime. So overall, I think that we always have room for improvement, but overall, we're ahead of the curve when it comes to a lot of these policing practices as it relates to the rest of the country. So I would ask the public, please don't paint us in the same brush as some of those horrible officers that are out there, because it's just not happening here. So, any questions?
Before we open up to questions, Chief, thank you very much for that. I'd just like to turn it over to the city manager for a couple comments on this, and we'll open it back up to the council. If you can hold it there.
Thanks, Chief. Nice job with your presentation. I would just add to the council, the things that the chief talked about just didn't all of a sudden happen one night. It's evolving. The agency continues to evolve as new best practices come out, as new, we do a lot of pilot projects. One of our current pilot programs is one that you're not going to see anywhere else that's being run from the department, and that's, the chief has a life coach that works with our at-risk youth that's embedded also in the schools. Not a police officer. It's a non-sworn person who is skilled and trained to be that liaison, where the PD has information, they work with youth. We're able to take that life coach, and I'm going to use life coach. He has a different title, but it's really life coach. What it's evolved to was, at-risk youth that are homeless, that are making bad choices, that are in the criminal justice system. Some of them are not. Some of them are just on the fringe of it. And she works with them. And she usually provides them, works with them, not necessarily provide, but finds the resources for them to be able to secure housing. Find the resources for them to be able to secure health care. Because some of them just, they're runaways or throwaways, whatever term you want to use, but they still want to finish school. They're still in the school system. How do we come alongside them? And she's embedded right within the police department and also within the schools. There's no one else running that type of program. That's a pilot program that we're running. It's being funded through CDBG. It's a program that has really just taken off, and her caseload is bigger than what she can even handle, because we have that many youth that are really on the brink of being, well, they're already homeless, but they're potentially not going to be able to finish school. What she also does is she works with them to say, there's no reason why you can't go to college. And we've worked with a lot of these youth. They've been at Central Maine Community College. They've gone through their whole program. Our first student that we were able to get in there, the first thing that we were, we faced with was something we didn't think about was she was homeless. She has a place during the school year, but at the first break, we didn't even think that the school shuts down and there's no place for her to go. And so fortunately, we had somebody within the community that stepped up and said, she can come live with us for the Christmas break. She'll spend Christmas with us. She was able to go into this home, was able to spend Christmas there. And then she stayed there through her entire, she did 3 years at CM. She stayed there on summers and even on breaks. The family basically took her in. So that's what the PD also does, not just these things that we're talking about here. The suspension diversion program, that's another one. It started as a pilot program. We had over 500 youth in our school system being suspended every single year. That's a high number. That means when they're suspended, there's no supervision. Most of the time, they're making bad choices. We're able to learn about a program that was happening in another state, and we modified it. They were able to implement it, and now those numbers dropped, I think, within the first year down to about 160 students within the school system that is faced with suspensions. But when they're suspended, rather than being out on the street or being home unsupervised, they go and they're part of a program. And that program is they get the schoolwork from the schools, they get their schoolwork so they don't fall behind. What ends up happening is when you're suspended for a 5-day suspension for fighting or whatever it might be, you're out of school for those 5 days. When you come back to class, you're already behind, you're already not up with the rest of the class. First thing that's going to happen is you're going to get in trouble again. You're going to have another suspension. Before long, you're now, why bother, and I'm dropping out. So the goal is, and we'll have this data soon because we've been running the program long enough, it'll be important to see what have we been able to do to try to enhance our graduation rates, right, and reduce our dropout rates, because we know that that's an issue. We need to make sure that we're focused on that. The PD's involved in that because we know those who are suspended, it's a pipeline to the criminal justice system. We know that they will end up in jail. It's just a fact. Not every kid that gets suspended will, but we know the majority of them end up eventually in that system. So those are the proactive things that the PD is doing, and I think they're doing a great job. The chief had an opportunity to talk with at least one of our congressional delegates recently, Senator King. I don't know if anyone else was on that call.
Senator King.
But talking about, he wanted to know what else could we be doing at a federal level, and the chief has ideas around that. There's a lot that we need to be doing regarding mental health. And there's a good option for us to be able to expand on that, where there are certain calls that come into the PD that the PD should not be responding to. How can we work to make sure we're getting the right person to the right call to deal with the issue they're being faced with? And so those are, when I talk about evolving, that's how we'll continue to evolve as we continue to look at future programming, what that looks like. So great job, Chief, and your officers are doing a super job with what they're faced with.
Thanks, Chief, and thank you, City Manager. I'll open this up to the council. We have a couple minutes. Obviously, if there's deeper conversations, we'll have them. We'll schedule them relatively quickly. But is there any questions directly for Chief on the presentation from tonight? I think, Councilor Milks, you had your hand up before I cut over.
No, that's okay. That's
Okay,
good.
very good. Hey, councilors?
I would just like to make a couple of statements. One is, I believe we have a Boys and Girls Club that could be used a lot more and be a lot more active, like you have done with the PAL. But they don't have it by themselves. So we need to figure out how can we bring them, within the limits that you people are in, and what will the cost be, and whatever else meets that. The other thing that I have mentioned quite a few times in the last 10 years is I would like to see in certain areas policemen back on the walk-in beat, even if it's only 1 hour out of a day or 2 hours out of a day, if it can be fit in there instead of us maybe sending an officer to the Walmart to ticket cars every hour, take 1 hour, break it out, letting him take wherever that designated serious place would be for police officers to get friendlier with people. And a great time would have been now. We've had kids out of school for months already, and I think you people have them little dots where all this needs to happen, And I think it's more important that we have police officers, youth, and in a lot of cases, we need parents to interact with police department in the right place. So I think it's more important than putting tickets on handicapped cars that may be in the wrong place at the wrong time. If we was to pick an hour out of every day and say Spring Street or Hampshire Street or Elm Street or South Main, whatever, only cover the 1 hour so you become,
Chief, you want to talk about the model regarding how many hours should be spent of their time should be on responding to calls, follow-up, and then community policing efforts? Because we've talked about these models over the years.
Yes, and what we're doing now is, we have a performance management system where we're monitoring officer self-initiated activity. And right now, we have a working group that's looking at adding community contacts and community involvement into those numbers as well. So we're putting the onus on the officers to get out and make those community contacts with people. Whether it's just getting out of the car and talking to somebody. We do directed patrols in neighborhoods. We do have officers that go out on foot. Usually during the evening hours when we're dealing with motor vehicle burglaries in a certain area, we'll put officers out on foot in there. And again, with the call volume that we're currently experiencing, it can be tough to carve out that hour where approximately 60% of an officer's time is spent doing, investigating offenses, conducting follow-ups, whatnot. And then we want to see 20 to 30% of that officer's time doing that self-initiated activity, whether it be directed traffic enforcement, field interviews, community contacts, getting out and talking to people. So we're going to be adding that community contact piece to our performance monitoring system as well. And we currently have a working group made up of officers that are doing that. And that push is coming from the officers. They came up with that idea. It's like, hey, community policing is such a priority for us. We need to look at that self-initiated activities that we're doing with those community contacts as well. So the officers are making that push to have that included as well.
Any other questions for the chief? Councilor Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chief, thank you again for coming tonight and for this presentation, and kudos for you and all your department. I've been on the council off and on for 20 years, and I know the good reputation our officers have in our department. I'm trying to stay on topic. You're talking about getting out into the neighborhoods and things, and coming up shortly is normally the National Night Out. And I know with this pandemic stuff going on, we may not be able to do it from what little rumors I've heard, or we may have to be creative and come up with something different. Have you thought of what we may do in order to try to salvage what we can on that night?
We are looking to possibly reschedule National Night Out for sometime the end of September, mid-October, just to kind of give us a little bit more space to recover from the pandemic a little bit more. And we're currently figuring out what that's going to look like currently.
Thank you sincerely.
Okay, Chief, I'd like to thank you, staff, obviously, for taking the time, talking, Councilor Milks, and the other councilors who sponsored this. Thank you very much. So with that, I think we're good to go.
And whenever any of you councilors are interested, if you'd like to come for a ride-along, just let me know. I know Councilor Boss and Councilor McLeod have done ride-alongs to get to know our operation a little bit better. If you want to have a ride-along, just let me know. We'll make that happen.
I tell you, it's a thrill to finally sit in the front seat. Suspended and didn't go to jail for long. So. Thanks, Chief. Next topic. Looks like we'll be talking about polls for the November 3rd, 2020 election. We have the city clerk, Ms. Clements Delaire, would be presenting on this.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Levesque and city councilors. I am here again to ask you to consider consolidating for the general election in November. The direction of the pandemic is unknown, and I think that it's safe to say that we can expect a very high turnout of absentee ballot requests. And I think that it's also safe to say that it's probably going to be challenging for me to line up a sufficient number of election workers to man the 5 polling places. So The state law requires that a public hearing and municipal approval to change polling places be held 90 days before an election, that would be August 5th. So if there is interest from the council, I would like to place this on the agenda for August 3rd for a public hearing and vote. I'm thinking of one polling place, the Norway Savings Bank Arena. One of the rinks, probably rink 2, they would put the floor in, and that would be sufficient space for all 5 polling places.
Thanks. So we, as the council knows, we were able to have at least 3 of our wards voted there during the primary. We were able to see parking lot flow. We used a different location. We used the mezzanine for that, which worked really well. I think we had a really good response. We know that being able to sit up in the arena will give us ample space. Something that I would like you to keep in mind is we're still determining what the opening of the school plan will look like. 4 of our voting locations are currently in a school. Those existing locations that we are using currently in the school will probably be transformed in some way for education purposes, because they're going to need all that square footage. So we will not have really access to the schools. The students are already potentially, depending on how the plan comes out, could already be on a modified schedule, and that means that's one more day that they would not be participating in some regarding education if we need to use that on a Tuesday. And so that's really what we're faced with. Fortunately, using all the schools as voting locations creates a problem for us anyway on any normal election, but during this time, that will even be more challenging. Mark Gosslin's here from Norway to talk about what the impact would be at Norway, and if you've got questions, he can certainly answer that. But as Sue said, we would be looking to use Rink 2 for that location. We had, like I said, we had a good response from those who did participate. All the 3 wards that went up, good access. And the other nice thing too was there was a lot of people that said had never been in here before. And this was a huge investment by the city, so it was nice that they were able to see it and see what's there. So, and we know that this is, we're able to make that modification with LATC for transit, so we're able to have a bus stop right there. I'll be getting some feedback on whether or not anyone participated in that, but I think regardless of whether or not anyone did, we need to make it available for this upcoming one in November as well. So,
If we use LATC again, we got to get more notification out, because a lot of people didn't know that we were having transportation to the polls. And also, sometimes it's hard to get to the polls, even if it was at Norway Savings or even here, because some residents have to take 2 or 3 buses to get where they got to go.
Wait, the bus system doesn't run efficiently?
Now, Mr. Mayor.
Well, we've been talking about that for years now.
I admit we have some sort of issues with our transportation system. I've never said it ran totally 100% perfect.
Part of that's tongue-in-cheek, Counselor, but it's a good point, because it does take a long time to get anywhere with an Auburn on the bus. But we have Mr. Goslin's here. Did you have any comments and your observations on how voting went?
Yeah, I think
At Norway Savings Bank.
Yeah, no, I think the voting went very well. We, in conversation with Sue after the event, our staff got together and we knew a lot of things went well, but we also analyzed the things as it related to traffic and whenever you have large amounts of people coming in, you kind of look at bottlenecks that might happen within that line in the queue, which allowed us to analyze that. And I've already talked to Sue about what we might be able to do to address some of those little bottlenecks. If we use all of Rink 2 for voting, we would shut down the facility, for just one day. We can confidently shut down the night before at 8 o'clock and get the floor covering on to get prepared for the next morning for any setup, and lines and anything that we're going to have to do. There's no crystal ball, right, where we have to understand what type of restrictions we might have come November, but we will be prepared to, handle them as if they were just this past week. Hopefully restrictions might be a little lighter at that point. That's what we're hoping. But I think even if we had the restrictions that are in place right now, we would still be able to accommodate the people coming through the doors, logistically, and have a better understanding of how we might be able to control traffic flow and get as many people into the doors as possible with, minimal waiting time. We really only saw one busy time at this past time, which was around, I would probably say about 2:30, 3 o'clock to about 5:30, 6 o'clock. At no point did we have lines outside. Our staff did a great job handling everyone inside. We actually put up tents, multiple tents, just to create queue lines and to protect from the weather. We did have some weather that came in, and we adjusted appropriately for that. For example, we had a petitioner outside during the time when we were getting some rain and thunder and stuff like that, and we were able to accommodate and had a backup plan to bring that individual inside, so that we were able to accommodate him at the same time, and he didn't have to limit what he was trying to do. The staff, we have a good staff in place that's now has gone and tested with this, and have a clear understanding also of, this was our first time working with Sue through a polling process. So now we actually have a better idea of how to possibly maybe help Sue in regards to that traffic flow, and try to accommodate as many people as possible in a timely manner. Especially with the parking that we have there, we'd be able to accommodate up to about 250, 260 cars if we had a full parking lot. The arena would just be out for a day. Once polling would be done, our staff would go in and do a late shift change over back to ice, and we would be able to have both rinks up and running by the morning.
If I could ask the council there's only one decision we have to make now, and that's whether or not we want to see this on an agenda item, not a workshop, but an agenda item on August 3rd. That would be the latest possible meeting we can bring this up effectively. During that period of time, there can obviously be debate, any questions submitted to staff between now and then for further answering, or to ask now. So if I could just get an understanding, is there a consensus on whether or not at this point in time a majority of the council would like to see this debated at a future agenda item? Okay. Now, open up to some questions for staff and comments.
I'd like to start with, I don't think the Norway Arena there, ice arena, is capable of handling a presidential election. I think we will turn people away thinking that we will bring everybody to that one place. We have a Boys and Girls Club in New Auburn that can be used if we have to. We have a City Hall that can be used. We have a Great Falls School that has a whole backside. The building legally could be ours tomorrow if we wanted to push that issue. Great Falls School, the gym part could be used and set up. Has a huge parking lot that will park 100 cars if it has to. Has all kinds of street parking. I don't think we belong going to one location when we're talking presidential elections. I think it's going to overflow too many people, and I believe there may even be people that won't get in to vote because of the hours that we will have to set. So I would not like to see us go that route, and I would like the public to weigh in on somehow having them either have a vote on the issue. Do they want one place? Do they want two places? Or what? I don't think that this council should make that determination sitting here at this place.
Do we have any, before we go into the debate of it, is there any questions though, like tangible questions? I just want to make sure that we're cognizant of everybody's time. And Councilor Boss, did you have a question? I don't want to cut you off, but.
More of a statement, but my inclination would be to stay with the same setup that we have for our most recent elections, so that we mitigate any further confusion with voters. If we keep the same two locations, I think that it keeps it simple. And it also, achieves the same outcome of reducing the number of needed polling locations.
Councilor McLeod?
I just had a question about when we approve the budget for the upcoming election, if we close 3 or 4 polls, does that save us money or allow us to reinvest that money from that department in somewhere else? Or
There really
roughly how
wouldn't
much
be a
would it
any significant savings from consolidating.
Councilor Carrier?
My question is just sort of like Councilor Boss's. Was there an issue here with the way that we were having to set up that caused us to have any kind of time constraints or anything like that? Did we back up? Did we?
Here at Auburn Hall?
At Auburn Hall, yes.
There weren't any issues, but I don't think Auburn Hall could handle the number of voters that would be coming through for a presidential with 2 wards voting here. I think it would be tight. It would be pushing it, I believe.
So any other questions or statements? This is good. There's some direction here I think that we could probably look at, Mr. Manager, Assistant City Manager Sue. Obviously, there's 3 things. And I think we all are in agreement that the schools are a no-go situation this year, right?
Absolutely.
So we're going to eliminate that from the consideration. Is that fair enough?
Yep.
The schools.
Yeah.
The schools. I'm just trying to work down and whittle down to some sort of alternate choices. I think Councilor Boss had a good choice of, maintaining what we just did for the primary, which is City Hall for 2 wards, and then Norway Savings Bank for 3. And I think the third option, or excuse me, the first option is just Norway Savings Bank. Second option was status quo from primary, July 14th. And the third option was something that Councilor Walker talked about, which is probably potentially adding a third location. So it would be Norway Savings Bank, City Hall, and something else in order to spread it out, eliminate potential lines. Am I correct on that paraphrase, Councilor?
Well, the Boys and Girls Club could take over the 2 that come here if it had to be, because they have more room than they do here.
Okay. Or some, okay, so an option either here, but again, no schools. We also have to be taking consideration poll workers. So that's going to be something. But if we could have for that conversation and that order, whatever that order is on our agenda August 3rd, we can always amend the order based upon the best intelligence and council directive that day. That'll be a good spot for, I think, further debate and looking at some additional options.
One of
Mr.
the
Mayor?
things staying here at City Hall is we need to make sure that everybody's on board on how people are going to park in the parking garage. Keeping the police department downstairs on days that we have to vote should be a no-no. They should be out of there. All them cars that sit there, as well as other people we give permission to sit there, should all be moved to a higher level. And the police that need cars should be outside onto the asphalt area.
And I think, and again, we all have the ability to, as we think of some ideas, that's a great idea, to get these out in email form to the rest of the council and city administration. That way they can kind of put it into their plan, at least think about it between now and then. Councilor Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I like Council Walker's idea of having a polling place in Auburn, in New Auburn. The only thing is, the problems with the Boys and Girls Club is the elevator does not work and hasn't worked for quite a while, and it needs to be handicapped accessible. Given that fact, if maybe we could talk with the roller drome, where it's on the first floor, maybe we could figure out some sort of arrangements if he'd allow us to have a polling place there.
And again, great ideas. Let's keep those coming between now and the August 3rd meeting, I think. And now that we've made this move away from schools to the primary, we will come up with some good solutions going forward that's equitable and allows full access.
Just one other question for Sue. A polling location, how many people do you have to run a polling location efficiently?
For a presidential, I would need 1, 2, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, approximately 12. That would be full days. A lot of the election workers only work half a day, so then I would have to double that number. And part of my concern is we're so close to this 90-day deadline, and in order to change a polling place, you need to make sure that it is handicap accessible. So any of these places that we're considering, I would need to make sure that they meet all of the criteria that the state requires, including parking and elevator
And I think
access. Or
as long as we can provide our best foot forward on that and explore some possibilities pre-August 3rd, a decision will be made on August 3rd. Councilor McLeod?
Just a quick question. Is this to amend the previous 5 locations, not just the election we just had? That was what the change would be from our previous presidential election voting locations, not,
It's always fairly consistent,
okay.
yeah, unless it's an off-off. So, okay, let's move forward on that, Mr.
We'll,
Manager.
we'll
Sir?
vet every location that is brought up and recommended to make sure that each one can be considered. If the council chooses, then we'll have all the background on each of them, on whether or not it is, meets all the requirements that the Secretary of State establishes for voting locations.
Okay, very good, thank you. And then we'll have an order, I think everybody's in agreement that our order will read at least at this point that Norway Savings Banks are primary. Then we can amend that order based upon the different options, unless a different option becomes very, very, very attractive between now and August 3rd, and that's up to the manager's discretion, okay? And then we can always amend with additional locations. We do need something as a placeholder into our agenda. Very good?
You're saying all 5 polls at Norway Arena is what you're looking?
Just as a default, because we need something in the agenda as an order. And then when the order gets on the floor, that's when we have the debate, and we can make the amendments saying, and we add for wards 2 and 3, the Boys and Girls Club. That's when we modify from there. But I just want everybody to know that there has to be some order on the agenda, but it can be amended when we just need to have something. Because it will be going to a vote, because it has to be done before August 5th. Okay. Very good. Any last questions on that comment, or on that topic? Okay. One little quick bit of housekeeping, and I'll turn over to the manager for dates on meetings.
Sure. So currently the way we have meeting dates set up is if there is a scheduled holiday, it's the following Monday. I want to propose that for Labor Day, rather than going to the following Monday, we would hold our meeting on September 8th, the following day, on that Tuesday. It is challenging on back-to-back weeks. If you go back and look at our previous agendas, most of the time they're heavy on the first day, their first meeting. Then that second week, staff just does not have the time to turn around projects. So for now, we'll do this individually. In some point, when we review ordinances and such, we'll recommend that moving forward. But I would just ask that, and then that would be on the August 3rd meeting, where you would actually make that, pass that order. So,
Any questions on that? Just heads up, okay. We will be having the August 3rd meeting. I know a while ago we talked about not having an August meeting, or having just one. But looking at the agenda and the schedule, there's so much that's going on, we need to have it. So, very good. Okay, well, thank you. We got about 6-7 minutes before our regular council meeting, so we'll adjourn the workshop, drink some water, beat the heat, and we'll be back in 7 minutes.
of being polite and, addressing these two young black men who are doing nothing wrong with utmost respect and care. And so I think there is that question of APD is the face of.
We go leave people. That's why you didn't mind the military. How could you?
But they have
you
to
never
respond
have
to the calls that they get, which is,
I'd like to call to order this city council meeting of July 20th,
I gotta go.
2020. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. We did, just so everybody's remembers from home, we took we had one meeting earlier, so this is a kind of a short month of July for us. So I'd like to start right off, though, with our minutes. We have the minutes of June 15th, 2020, regular council meeting. Are there any corrections? If not, I'm going to entertain a motion to accept these minutes.
Second.
A motion from Councilor Walker, or a second from Councilor Carrier. All those in favor?
Aye.
None being? Approved 6-0. Next, we have the minutes of the June 22nd special council meeting. Are there any corrections? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve these minutes of the
Motion
June.
to approve.
And I have a motion from Councilor Walker. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilor Boss. All those in favor? Passes 6-0. Now on to communications, presentations, and recognition. Well, look at this. An oath of office. Brian Wood, Assistant City Manager, first day, first week, first meeting. Please, can you stand and be officially sworn in by our clerk?
I don't know how to work that. Do you want to?
Official job, turn the mic on.
No pressure.
There we go. Okay, if I could have you raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Brian M. Wood,
I, Brian M. Wood,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
so long as I shall remain
so long as I shall remain
a citizen thereof,
a citizen thereof,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and that I will faithfully discharge,
to the best of my abilities,
to the best of my abilities,
the duties incumbent upon me
the duties incumbent upon me
as Assistant City Manager
as Assistant City Manager,
according to said constitutions,
according to said constitutions,
the laws of this state,
the laws of this state,
and ordinances of this city.
and ordinances of the city.
Mr. Wood, I'd like to give you this time right now. If you have a couple minutes, I know we didn't talk about this prior, but if you have anything you'd like to say to the City of Auburn or this council, please, by all means, take some time now.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council, Mr. City Administrator. I just would like to take a moment to say thank you for this opportunity. It is a pleasure and an honor to be the new Assistant City Manager. It is both a dream, and to be a part of a city such as this is beyond exciting, and to work with such fantastic council and fantastic team is absolutely amazing. I am beyond elated to get started, and looking forward to meeting and serving each and every one of the residents that live here, and supporting the broader efforts to make this city what we know and want it to continue to be, and living up to the legacy and the history that has made Auburn the greatest small city. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Thank you very much, and welcome. Welcome to the city. Welcome to the state.
Thank you.
And Rolly Steiner, you're buying.
And I will state that would be your first official meeting as your tenure, and it's kind of fitting. Next, Police Department State Accreditation presentation. With us today is the Maine Chiefs Police Association President. That would be Chief Jack Peck from Farmington. Welcome, Chief Peck. Thank you very much for coming down here.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Good evening, Mayor Levesque and City Council members. It's an honor to join you here this evening. My name is Jack Peck, and I'm the Chief of the Police in Farmington and the current President of the Maine Chiefs of Police Association. I'm here tonight to help celebrate the professional achievement of the Auburn Police Department and present official recognition of their participation in the Maine Law Enforcement Accreditation Program, or MLEAP. The concept of state accreditation began a few years ago. The Maine Chiefs had a vision started by Chief Crowell at the time for a program that was attainable and affordable for all Maine law enforcement agencies. A program that would send a message to all citizens of Maine that we are committed to our communities and our profession, and that Maine law enforcement agencies are among the best in the country. A program that would reinforce our credibility and inspire the trust and confidence of the people we serve. MLEAP is the compilation of best practices needed to address the most critical tasks in law enforcement. The MLEAP standards were developed to ensure the protection of citizens' rights, to improve the safety of our employees, and to ensure the operational and professional integrity of the agency. These standards cover all aspects of law enforcement operations, including use of force, pursuits, property and evidence management, and patrol and investigation operations. I'm proud to tell you that the Auburn Police Department is among the first 5 Maine agencies to achieve MLEAP accreditation. This department is a model of achievement and excellence, and Chief Moen and his team are to be commended. The Auburn Police Department stands out as a model of excellence in law enforcement, meeting and maintaining the highest standards of professionalism, integrity, and accountability. The award I am presenting tonight reads as follows: for serving as a model of excellence in law enforcement and successfully meeting the professional standards established by the Maine Chiefs of Police Association and the Maine Law Enforcement Accreditation Program, the Auburn Police Department has reached the highest level of professionalism and integrity and is hereby recognized as a state-accredited law enforcement agency for a period of 3 years. It gives me great pleasure to present this award to Chief Jason Moen, Deputy Chief Kugel, and the entire team at the Auburn Police Department. Great job. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you
Very much.
Anybody makes fun of this mask?
Never.
Oh, so pretty.
I am smiling.
Both should be smiling.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have a proclamation, a very fitting one too. July, we're designated as Park and Recreation Month. And let me read this proclamation if I could for the record. Whereas parks and recreation programs are an integral part of communities throughout this country, including Auburn. And whereas our parks and recreation are vitally important to establishing and maintaining the quality of life in our communities, ensuring the health of all citizens, contributing to the economic and environmental well-being of a community and region. And whereas parks and recreation programs build healthy, active communities that aid in the prevention of chronic disease, provide therapeutic recreation services for those who are mentally or physically disabled, and also improve the mental and emotional health of all citizens. And whereas parks and recreation programs increase the community's economic prosperity through increased property values, expansion of the local tax base, increased tourism, and the attraction and retention of businesses, and crime reduction. And whereas parks and recreation areas are fundamental to the environmental well-being of our community. And whereas parks and recreation parks and natural recreation areas, improve water quality, protect groundwater, prevent flooding, improve the quality of the air we breathe, provide vegetative buffers to development, and produce habitat for wildlife. And whereas our parks and natural recreation areas ensure that ecological beauty of our community and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature and recreate outdoors. And whereas the U.S. House of Representatives has designated July as Parks and Recreation Month, and whereas Auburn recognizes the benefits derived from parks and recreation resources. Now therefore I, Jason Levesque, Mayor of the City of Auburn, hereby declare that July is recognized as Park and Recreation Month in the City of Auburn, signed by my hand today, 20th day of July, 2020. So there we have it, Parks and Rec. My message on top of that, Mark Goslin's here, he knows it all too well. We need to be a city with a culture of sport and recreation. That takes on many, many different forms. Let's find out what type of sport and recreation are best suited for each individual here, and then go out and pursue it in the great natural environment that Auburn has. So thank you very much. Next, we have planning board communication. Let me just start off a little bit. Obviously, we're talking about a comprehensive plan. We received communication from the chair, Matt Duval, of the planning board. Basically, we have some tasks ahead of us. We all know this, in a spirit of cooperation with planning board, with the city council, and many other groups, and community members and staff. We need to all increase our communication levels and really think about what we need and how we need to make sure Auburn is prepared for the growth for the next 10 years. So there's 3 questions that Chairman Duval proposed to us. Let me read those off. First, what timeline has City Council set for updating process, and would the council share that timeline with the planning board? 2, the planning board imagines that it might have a role in that updated process. Could City Council share the specific duties it envisions for the planning board in that process? 3, the planning board understands that City Council is developing a list of topics to address in the update. The board would very much appreciate an opportunity to review that list and to suggest additions to it. 3 questions, 3 very different types of answers, and long. City manager proposed, and I agreed to, August 3rd, a joint workshop with the planning board to fully discuss these issues, discuss these 3 questions, and come up with some sort of good plan moving forward so that we can start, which we are required to, our comprehensive plan this year with hopeful a good completion date at either the end of this year, but more likely the beginning of 2021. I'd like all of us to think about these 3 questions. You're all copied on this correspondence. Think about what it means, especially I think we're going to lean a bit heavily on Councilor Boss and Councilor Carrier. Your past experience on the planning board and throughout this term so far, Councilor Boss and both Councilor Carrier have talked about incongruities with ordinance, comp plan, transition zones and so forth that need to get hammered out. We'll work with staff and the city manager's office and economic development office to come up with a timeline that we can review so we're not starting from scratch. Is there any questions concerning this? Again, I just want to get this communication out to you, knowing that we'll address it on August 3rd. Very good. Thank you. Mr. Manager, is there anything you want to add to this?
All set.
Okay. We'll be moving on. COVID-19 update. I got Deputy Chief Matt Fifield, AFD, and then City Manager Kroll.
Good evening, Council Mayor Levesque. It's been some time since I provided you an in-person update, so I'm happy to be here tonight and provide you with that update. I believe the last time I was here was, seeing me over a video chat was June 1st. So here's the updates related to COVID-19 as of today. Confirmed cases in the state of Maine, 3,287, 424 probable cases for a total of 3,711 total cases. To date, 117 people have passed away from COVID-19 in the state of Maine, 375 cumulative hospitalizations, and happy to report tonight, 3,159 recoveries. Brings our active caseload in the state currently at 435. Here in Androscoggin County, 457 confirmed cases, 55 probable cases, bringing our total to 512. That gives us an active cases in our county of 35. you'll notice that's a significant reduction from last time that we spoke, and I'll give some comparisons in just one moment. Also, in the last 2 weeks in Lewiston, Auburn area, Auburn-Lewiston area, we've had 15 new cases. So just putting those numbers into relation, it's hard to extract those numbers in the media often, and I like to drill down the facts for you. So here in Androscoggin County, 5 deaths, one recently this last week. 38 cumulative hospitalizations in our county. Statewide testing, 146,792 tests have been completed. It brings our cumulative positivity rate at 3.08%. Another good note, at the end of last week, last Friday, the 7-day period prior to that, our positivity rate was at 1%. So good news on the positivity rate. Current hospital capacity at this time, 12 patients are being treated total in our hospitals related to COVID-19, 10 of those in critical care, 4 of those patients requiring ventilation assistance. Talking a little bit about available supplies in the state of Maine, 154 critical beds available out of 402 in the state, 266 ventilators available out of 319. Alternative ventilators, we still have 441 of those. So I spoke earlier, I'll give a quick comparison. As of June 1st was the last time I spoke to you at video chat about COVID-19 and the numbers, and we'll go back to those numbers at that point. Total cases at that time in the state were 2,349. Again, we live today at 3,711. It's an increase of 1,362 cases. June 1st, we had 674 active cases. Today, we live at 435. That's with that total increase of 1,362 cases. So that's a decrease of 239 cases in that time frame. 89 deaths on June 1st had been recorded, and we're at 117 today. That's an increase of 28 in that time frame. So further, I'll elaborate on some of the city programs. First, I'll add that any city-sanctioned program is required to have a safety plan with precautions that is reviewed by myself and the emergency management team members and approved by us. So any program sanctioned by us has those programs in place. They're reviewed, they're consistent through the city. One of those examples is our summer recreation program that's serving obviously a lot of kids from our community and some of the surrounding communities. Happy to report, if you've read any of my weekly updates, last week I did safety checks of each individual site and saw some really great things there. A lot of happy kids running around, getting some exercise, but I was really happy that the staff is really in tune with what these kids need. So what I mean by that is that they understand the challenges of anxiety, withdrawal from their parents, missing their friends. They're incorporating all that. They're adding different things for the well-being of these children, and they're doing mental health breaks for them, yoga, all kinds of different things to release that for them. So I'm happy to report that. It's also becoming hugely important to assist our school department in what are the challenges they're going to have. It's kind of a test period for them. So it's been certainly very helpful. What are we doing right now? So a lot of the times right now, we're in the summer, everybody's dealing with the heat, everybody's taking some vacation. We're reminding our staff to stay vigilant. Remember that where we were and where we are now is because we got there because of good practices. So we're continuing those practices, keeping them up, looking at our supply chains for PPE, making sure that we're still in the good position that we were in the, early on in this pandemic, and I'm happy to report we are still there. We're really working at increasing those supply chains, make sure we're not relying on any one local source. Continuing some advancement in the types of PPE that's less reliant on disposable equipment. Also, recently, or actually for the last month and a half, we've been working directly with the school department to work on their reopening plan. And they're going to further elaborate on that to the school committee this week, Wednesday night. But I'm happy to report that we did come out with a common statement, and that was to return to in-person learning and maximize that as much as possible. We're working, with the state guides on that, but I'll let them elaborate on that on Wednesday night. So I'd finish by, a lot of what we're doing in the state is working. So I say this all the time to the recreation department, to the staff in the city, don't complicate it. Social distancing, washing your hands, staying home if you're sick, communicating, educating the public or our workforce, and also identifying those situations where people could be sick, work them through the testing process or get them medical care, and have a solid process for them to return to work or return to camp. That's been successful so far. We have been very happy with the results so far, so we're continuing the path. It's working, so we're not going to change it at this point. So, and I'm here offering opportunity for any questions, concerns. Thank you.
So just to add on the other components of what's taking place within the city, thank you, Deputy Chief. Matt's done an outstanding job. He's really has stepped in for the situation to be able to meet the growing demands and needs. As a city, we're also working on, as you all know, we received about $354,000 in Keep Maine Healthy funds. Mark's going to talk a little bit about that, but one component that we are working with is our ethnic community boards and organizations. We're working on developing a good plan. We see the numbers. We know that we have an increase in the amount of those within our immigrant community that are being have contact with COVID, and that we're working through that. But we also know we have many that there are either language barriers, transportation barriers, all kinds of barriers that might prevent them from going and getting tested. And so we are working with those organizations. We're having good dialogue. We're working with the city of Lewiston on this as well. So we're doing a joint effort on this matter. And so we'll be continuing rolling out, really focusing on education and how do we educate and provide the education in the appropriate languages and the appropriate materials and the appropriate messaging, and using those organizations to develop that messaging. They know the messaging well. Once they know what the guidelines are, so we're working with them to develop that and be able to push that information out. I look forward to this week probably nailing down a good plan on that with City Administrator Dennis Dote from Lewiston. He and I have been in constant contact all week, and even this weekend talking about this plan, as well as some of those leaders within those groups. So more to come on that. The other piece is regarding enforcement. I think many of you saw some of the media coverage last week as it pertained to businesses and what we're doing for enforcement. We are focusing enforcement within our code enforcement officer. These are not matters for law enforcement to respond to and deal with. So we push that out through social media. That's not what we want coming in through our dispatch center, our 911 center. We've gotten 911 calls regarding reporting some of this. That's not the method that we want to use. We pushed out the method that can be used. That works really well. If somebody does feel compelled that there's an issue and feel compelled that they need to report that, they can do so through the state's website that we promoted. And that really reduced the amount of complaints that we received. And so that process works well. We received feedback from the state. They are promoting that throughout all municipalities to use that same messaging that we used regarding this enforcement component. The state contacts us back if there is a complaint that they would like us to follow up on. That's our responsibility as the licensing agency. We do that. We educate, we have conversations with the business owner, and we're finding that businesses are more than willing, or if they're not, they know they need to, but to get into compliance, put the appropriate signage out. One piece that we are working on is consistent messaging and signage. So we will be providing signage for businesses. It's up to them if they want to use it. But what we want is, we really want this message, the same signage on every business. So that way there's not one business that's feeling that I'm trying to comply with the rules, this other business isn't. And so we want that consistent messaging so all those businesses will know that. We're also working on education. We have a lot of complaints regarding violations that are just not violations. That's why we put out the actual retail locations that are greater than 50,000 square feet. We did get some pushback on why did we put those out, because the complaints that we were getting was that another business wasn't requiring it. Well, it's not a requirement. Their business is not greater than 50,000 square feet. So we're really trying to work on messaging. The process for education is going really well. Businesses are responding well when we talk with them. I spoke directly with one of those businesses that we had some concerns with, there was some coverage on, and that business owner said, yes, I'll comply, tell me what I need to do, and we worked with them. So we'll continue doing that. But I think the consistent messaging is going to be important. We'll develop that signage, we'll be making those available to businesses, and we're also working with the chamber in this process. Chamber is a great resource for us. We have many of our businesses are members of chamber. They also are asking for this. The chamber has also done a survey for the businesses, and a lot of their feedback was, help us be with the education component and to make sure that this is consistent messaging throughout the business community. So we are working on that. Matt did talk about the one death that we had. I don't think we shouldn't overlook that was a 20-year-old that was here in Androscoggin County that was part of that death. Does communicate that, anyone is potentially vulnerable to this, to COVID, and we need to make sure that these precautions are taking place and using common sense, and that's what Matt talked about. I think that's what we're really focusing on, and those that are still looking at opening up, we are coming alongside anyone who wants to open up or to be able to do an event or whatever it might be, and we are providing them all the information so they could do it safely. We know of some groups that held different types of camps and activities this past week. Matt was right there. He was on site, talked with them in advance, provided education, gave them all the materials that they needed to make sure that they did it safely, and we got good response. There was no issues. Parents felt comfortable and safe, and that's just not with our summer rec camp, but that's other camps that are happening throughout the community as well. So staff is doing a great job. Matt's leading that team, and I think we're responding well to any of the concerns that we get. Mark's going to talk about recovery and the work that's taking place with that.
Yeah, and I would also like to piggyback on what City Manager Kroll is talking about, Matt, and the leadership he's providing as it relates to not just our emergency action team, but also in the recovery efforts. And if you look at what we did for voting this past week, and still trying to provide a almost as normal space as possible here and at the arena, for people to do what's right is to vote, right? Matt was critical in that whole process, in allowing us to figure out how to get people into the building safely, how would we make sure that we're doing things properly, using common sense. But the biggest thing is when he gave us that thumbs up, we felt overly confident that we were doing the things right. So kudos to Deputy Chief Fifield for what he's doing and helping us, making sure that we're doing the right things the right way, but also not saying no. I mean, we're doing our best to try to move forward with whatever we can do to accommodate our community. So 3 things I want to talk about tonight, and the last time we talked was we talked about survey results, and we talked about some of the key points to those survey results, and the first thing was, small business and how the pandemic is affecting our businesses. We do have, $100,000 of, small business loan and micro enterprise loans that are now being able to be applied for. We had some alerts that went out last week. We're going to continue to work with Liz in communicating that out to the public in regards to the availability of that money and how that money might be able to assist, low and moderate income individuals. That is going to be helping with payroll, possibly purchasing equipment, any maybe capital improvements, inventory for those types of businesses. It's a 0% interest loan. It's a 3-year loan. And after they start paying after after 13 months into the loan. So that's one piece, and that was one part of the survey that we saw kind of hot buttons around how can we affect small businesses and how can we affect business in this community, with the pandemic. The other component to that, and City Manager Crow also mentioned, was the Keeping Maine Healthy funds that we just received. And then honestly, kudos to our staff. City Manager Kroll sent out an email and he says, we need to turn this around really quickly in order to get these funds. And our staff jumped on it, all the departments, and then kudos to Rita Bowdry, who kind of put all of our craziness that we put on paper. She actually made it look really great showed great information about the city of Auburn, why we needed the money, and what that money was going to be used for. And that was everything from PPE, infrastructure improvements to, to fight COVID. It also included, staff monitoring, making sure that we have people in place to help monitor the procedures that we've put in place. So we were able to receive that money. And again, that's something on the survey that the community talked about, is how are we going to continue to manage the pandemic, and how are we going to continue to move forward as a community. And then one of the last things I also want to talk about is the mental health component that was brought up within the surveys. Sabrina Bass, we're extremely, I'm extremely lucky to have her in my department. And it's incredible what she does, not on top of just recreation, but she goes out and researches. She's great at researching around what might be out there to help us. And she knew certain things are hot buttons, and there was a grant out there for community concepts and it's not a huge grant, but it's a small grant that we were able to get through community concepts, that we're able to either, work with a third party or hire someone individually, but it's around mental well-being and mental wellness. Whether it's us being able to put together some virtual programming around that, working with small groups, or coming up with activities that will allow us to hopefully affect, again, this pandemic is not just affecting us physically, but you can see it. It's affecting people emotionally, mentally. It's draining, and it is a big piece to it. And there's that piece, I think, will be a continual effort for us to continually look at resources that might be able to help us, whether it's something that we do internally or we look externally to help us with those types of things. So those are the three things I kind of wanted to bring up and touch upon, because they all were related to the survey results and we talked about, and those are the hot buttons that we're going to continue to focus on as we move forward, as we continue to kind of go through this process.
Council, any questions? I will say the fact that there's no questions means, and I got to tell you all, very, very, very impressed with the three of you on your conciseness of your presentation, the facts given, and the succinctness of your summaries. So, very nice. Councilor Walker?
Yeah, this is for Matt. Matt, United New Auburn Association plans on doing their meeting the 28th of this month at Rolly's Diner. Would you like to come down and talk with Kenny and I on, anything that you feel might be different than what we're thinking?
Yeah, certainly. I'm available. You know my number. Give me a call.
Thank you.
I'll be down there. Not that one.
Thank you, gentlemen. Oh, sorry, Councilor Gary, question?
Not a question, well, it isn't. This report that you had done tonight and gave us, did we get an email copy of it? Or can we?
Yeah, if you haven't already got it, we'll send it back out.
Thank you.
No, the one for this week, Matt, I think you just sent to me today, right?
Yeah.
So I'll push that out, and you'll get it. So.
Thank you kindly. I enjoy the readings and the updates and your thoroughness.
Yeah, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Okay, we're going to move on to Council of Communications. I'm going to start with that large. Councilor Boss, again, communicating anything that the city or other councilors or staff need to know about that's coming up.
Thank you. One communication was to say that I did a ride along with APD and Chief Moen stole my thunder, but I just wanted to say that I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I highly encourage every single city councilor to do the same. I think it's really important we understand the work of the departments that we're serving here in this role, so I would suggest that you ride along as well. So that's my one update. Thank you.
Very good. Councilor, I'm sorry, so Councilor Lasagna is not here. She's on vacation. Good for her. Councilor, second ward, Councilor McLeod. I'm always used to going in a certain direction.
Councilor Boss just stole my thunder. I also went on a police ride along and
Front seat?
Yes, front seat for the whole time. I also want to echo that the department we have is phenomenal and is doing everything amazingly, and we are way ahead of the curve of where nationally people are trying to get to. So we should be very proud of what we do here in the city.
Outstanding. Ward 3, is Councilor Milks?
I don't have anything today.
Ward 4?
Well, I would have gone on a ride-on, but I did one for 5.5 years, so I didn't figure I needed to go on another one. So, the school department is having a retreat. As you know, we've been working on the plans to bring the students back this fall. We had a retreat last week. We have another retreat tomorrow night, and then we will be having the school meeting on Wednesday night. So if you can't attend, which most of you can't, but make sure you're watching us. And if you have anything that you need to have brought forward, let me know, and I'll bring it up at the meetings.
Very good. Councilor Walker?
Yeah, Brian, do you think they will talk about how kids will go back to school and kids that need credit for graduation? Will we know something how it's going to, because we've got them questions popping up everywhere.
We're going to be talking about how we're going to be returning to school. As far as credits, we had discussed that part of last year in working with the kids. A lot of the kids now have been working into the summer on some of the stuff that they've needed, and it will continue on moving forward to make sure that Scott Anier, the principal of the high school, has been working very well with getting all the kids lined up and knowing exactly where they are in their programs and what they need to move forward.
Will this council get more of an update on what's going on at the high school right now up there? I mean, there is things happening, so not in the old one, but for the new.
Yes, they have. They've had a couple of meetings. Just got finished with one. I want to say last Tuesday or Thursday night, and I'll bring back some information on that. I know that there've been modifications to the plan, and they're looking at because of the site move. They've moved further up the hill. They've talked to the residents in the neighborhoods that will be abutting them. So I'll bring back some information in regards to that.
That's good. The other thing I'd like to mention is if you're out riding around, like I always am, I think the city overall is looking really good, and I think, Public Works and other departments are doing a great job. But if you go by Pettingill Park, you'll see that they got a nice new press box down there at the softball field, which I think is a great thing. I've been waiting for the paint to go on, see what color they pick, pink or orange, one or the other. But also the lower Pettingill baseball field area, I love it that they've really used the new machine that we gave them the permission to buy a year ago. They cut all the banking and stuff down there. It really looks great. The old fencing is all gone. And of course, moving forward now to get the softball complex done down there, it's going to make a big difference on how we're moving the recreation department forward in the future. And don't forget, everybody, we still want a Parks Department back in this city that we can truly call Parks and Recreation together. There's a dual department.
Councilor Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to report that the community gardens is allowing more access to the people that have gardens, as long as they can demonstrate they know there's safety protocols that's been prescribed. And once you do, you get the combination to the padlocks on both the doors. So I've made full use of learning the procedures really quick, and I've got my garden done. But there are still some folks that are having trouble that maybe have lost their heart because heart in doing the garden like they once did, because it's hard still to tell how many beds are actually being utilized, how many people that have garden spots that are looking fairly decent. Well, once you get in there, you can tell the really nice looking ones, but there's some plots you can't tell if they're actually being used or they're free lots. So I would like to see if our city manager could get an update to find out actually how many people are actively working their plots in specifically the Newbury Street garden, how many plots that are still available. And if we have extra plots, then maybe we could find ways to get them utilized. And I know this growing season is coming, it's slowly winding down. I know there's still a lot of time, but for big size crops that take a lot of time. Right now, I think the quick ones that you can plant that we get a quick turnaround before our September, October weather are the ones that we need to plant. There was one issue with one gardener that they've been reaching out to, but because of his difficulties, he hasn't been able to meet with them, and he was afraid that he was possibly going to lose his 2 plots because he had seen movement and work in them. And I just got some resolution somewhat to it. The issue's not totally resolved, but at least the nutrition center that manages the garden are still willing to work with him, and they have assured me he gets to keep his 2 plots.
Very good. My turn. I'd like to start off with just a great announcement. If you remember, last month, May, I believe, proclamation, or even a little bit earlier, about the 100th anniversary of the passing of the 19th Amendment, excuse me, which gave women the right to vote in this country. The First Lady in Washington, you know the place, through a contest, a nationwide contest, an art contest, asking girls between the ages of 8 and 18 to create an artwork for and to celebrate the 100th anniversary. Auburn pushed this out. Thank you, Mr. Manager, and our communications department for getting that message out. The First Lady chose one piece of art from every state. We had a student, a senior at Edward Little, Sophia Carson, who won. So she's going to represent the entire state of Maine in a gallery exhibition, hard time saying that word, in Washington at the White House, I believe. More details will come, and when time permits, we'll get Sophia and her parents to come into council chambers and to share a copy of her artwork, because the real one's going to be in D.C. So I think that's pretty cool. So, and I saw a copy of it, and it was absolutely stunning and beautiful. So that's great positive news to lead up on. Actually, everything's pretty positive tonight.
Can you elaborate slightly what type of?
It's art drawing. No, I can't.
Oh, no. I mean, is it a drawing, a sculpture? Or?
No, drawing. They all had to be two-dimensional, I believe is a technical term, but I can't even draw a stick person. So, but it's beautiful. I can definitely appreciate that. So, and we'll get her in, and we'll get copies, and I'll get those distributed, and hopefully out as a display at City Hall and our display case too soon. So, something to be really proud of. I had several meetings with, and the city manager and I, with the new superintendent, Dr. Brown. Great, pleasurable. Obviously, she's coming on board, like other people are coming on board. In the middle of some unique challenges, I feel very comfortable with the fact that she's handling these challenges extremely well. We did talk about reentry program. We did talk about how the city can really help with that for a lot of different reasons. I think Deputy Chief Fifield elaborated a little bit on that. We are a test bed of proper practices and appropriate standard operating procedures. So hopefully there's some sort of combination of municipal, school department cooperation that can happen throughout this school year, at least when it's needed, in order to lessen the blow emotionally and educationally with our students. Be premature to talk about anything like that right now, but we'll see how these conversations comes out over the next couple of weeks. I would also like to invite the superintendent, after she's done briefing and the school department's done their work, to come in and talk with us during a meeting and under communications about what's going on there, what the pros and cons are, so we can all hear it firsthand as well. Okay? Next, a lot of you knew a couple weeks ago there's an article in the Sun Journal talking about arrest statistics and race. There was an omission of Chief Moen's answers before deadline to the reporter's questions. Those were omitted. Mistakes happened. It was quickly corrected online. It was not corrected on the print version. The editor, Judy Myers, once finding out about it, absolutely issued an apology and gave us equal print billing for not only Chief Moen's full, unedited answers to the reporter's questions, but also a rebuttal op-ed penned by myself, along with a pretty significant editorial from Mrs. Myers explaining the mistake, owning it, and then offering a way to fix it going forward. And I will say, there's one lesson I always try to tell my kids. The best judge of integrity by an individual is whether or not they own an error and they try to make good on it. And they did. Mistakes happen in any massive organization like the Sun Journal. Regardless of the mistake, the way they handle the aftermath is extremely positive. And I have to say that we all should be very thankful that they did, because other organizations might not have. So the fact that they are a community asset, not just for Auburn and Lewiston, but for Androscoggin, Franklin, Oxford County, literally about 165 to 180,000 people, is an asset that we should never take lightly. And I do not want to wake up one day and be a small insert in the Portland Press Herald. I don't even know where Portland is, nor do I care. So I want to make sure that we have our Lewis and Son Journal. I'll get a call from the mayor of Portland on that tomorrow. So that's my comment on that. Thank you very much to the Sun Journal for working on that. That's it for my communications. We'll be moving on now to our first open session of the night. Members of the public are invited to speak to the council about any issue directly related to city business or any item that does not appear on the agenda. This is the first time we are not having public participation or open session remotely. If you do come in, and I don't believe we have anyone in the room, Mr. Wood, no? We don't have anyone here, but our current operating procedure is if the public can come and speak, they wait in a designated holding area where they can view the meeting in our community room across the hall. They'll come over one at a time and provide public comment when it's time. So we are in session now, if you would, and not working remote. Today we have no one here, so we'll move on.
Mr. Mayor, I would just add that we did receive one email for public comment that was all forwarded to you, so it'll be part of the minutes. We'll continue with that process. I think that's a good process for those who do not feel comfortable coming into a meeting to be able to provide comment. So that email will be on all of our agendas moving forward. We'll continue making that available. We do have, I just want to clarify, we do have Julia Harper in the other room. She's here to answer any questions on one of the items later on.
Okay.
But we'll monitor to make sure if anybody goes into the community room.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much for that clarification. Moving on. Unfinished business. We have no unfinished business on tonight's agenda. Adopting the Agricultural Advisory Committee charge. This is Order 79-07-202020. Adopting the Agriculture Advisory Committee charge. I'll entertain a motion at this time.
So moved.
Second.
I got a motion from Councilor Carrier and a second from Councilor McLeod. I'll open this up to public for comment. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak? There are none. So bring it back to the council. Council, this is just a reaffirmation of my executive order made back in June that you all have copies of, just to bring you up to speed. Is there any comment, conversation?
Does the timeline that's written into the original executive order still hold as part of this council taking on the charge?
Yes, it does. But remember, there is ambiguity there, and it's modifiable by the chair of the Agricultural Committee if need be.
I think one point of clarification that would be helpful is which emergency order it's referring to.
I'll read it to you right now. This is in reference to Emergency Executive Order 01-05-022020.
My apologies. What I meant was the state emergency order for COVID. State of emergency.
State of emergency.
The state of emergency or our municipal state of emergency for COVID.
Municipal state of emergency for COVID.
Okay, thank you. I think it would be worthwhile to insert that language so it's clear.
I don't think that's a problem, do we?
No, I think adding that just for clarification.
Yeah, because it's in there. Okay. Very good. Thank you. Any further comment? Councilor Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is still very important. So even if our executive emergency, our city emergency is done, this don't go away, right? We still get the report and they still do all these different things listed in the emergency order, right?
This is in effect until a final report is submitted and accepted by the city council.
Right. So it doesn't go away if we okay, that's what I want to make sure of.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions or comments? No? Very good. And again, if anybody wants to reference this, is in the online agenda. I'll ask for a vote at this time. All those in, we have an order. Yes. God, it's been so long since we've been all together here. I'm going to ask for a vote. Show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstained? None being? Passes by a vote of 6-0. Okay. Thank you. Second, next is Order 80-07-202020, adopting the Local Foods, Local Places Community Action Plan. I'll entertain a motion at this time.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion from Councilor Boston, a second from Councilor McLeod. I'll open this up to the public to speak. Any members of the public that would like to speak on this? And Ms. Harper, if you're in the other room, if you'd like to come in at this time, you can, obviously, in case there's any questions, please do so. Are there any other members of the public that would like to speak? None being? I'll bring this back to the council. Council, is there any comments on this? I'm going to open it up.
I'd like to make one comment, which is to say that with the previous order adopting the Agriculture Advisory Committee charge, many of the strategies that are in that order are also in the LFLP action plan, so they're very much in line, and I personally very fully support us adopting the action plan.
Any other council? Councilor Walker?
Yeah, I've read through this, and I agree with Councilor Boss that they are a lot in line with what is going on with our Ag Committee. I would like our Ag Committee to take this on a little bit before we vote in favor of putting it into effect as it is right now. I would like to see them do more work on the Ag and lining us up properly to make this work and be sure we're all in agreement.
I attended technically the first Agricultural Committee as a resident, and they reviewed this action plan fully, and as you saw in the cover letter, there was unanimous support of the action plan, and they went further along to say that they believe that the city and city council should put more weight and more resources behind the action plan. So the Ag Committee has fully reviewed it and are fully in support of it.
Congress against the executive order. Councilor Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In most reports that we get, like with the strategic plan, we had the charrettes, we had the different meetings, and when they compiled the final report, we broke it down as a council and discussed and digest each item. Since this wasn't part of something the city initiated, and the only time that we really got it to look at it was when it was presented a couple weeks ago. I read it, and I know most of us also have, but we need time, I feel, to digest this. And I'd like to also see the Ag Committee to further look at it, because like what the good council boss said, they said that this weighs more weight for the council to enact some of the policies and proposed plans in there. And I don't think just by doing it tonight we'll do it justice. I would like to see this. Can I continue, please?
I'm sorry?
Can I continue?
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to table this until the Ag Committee has done more work on the emergency executive order, because there may be some things that come out from that we would like to see inserted maybe into this plan. So I move to table this for a time not to exceed 6 months in order to give the Ag Committee more time to digest this and also for us to have more workshops to discuss it.
I have a motion on the floor to table this resolution to a time certain within 6 months from today, dependent upon 6 months from today. Okay, correct? I'm paraphrasing, I'm trying to.
Yes.
That's the motion that you want.
Yes.
I second that.
I just have a motion to table. I have a second by Councilor Walker. Excuse me. No debate on table? Straight up and down vote? No. Okay. At this point, there's no debate on table when a motion's been made and seconded. I'd like to ask for a vote. All those in favor of the motion to table the resolution to a time to certain, not to exceed 6 months, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. All those in favor of not tabling the motion, please raise your hand. 1, 2. All those abstain? Okay. The motion to table passes by a vote of 3, 2, 1.
I didn't see how Councilor Carrier voted.
Voted with the table.
To table?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. If there's any clarity, we can ask the clerk and the administration for some clarity on that, but a time not to exceed 6 months from now. Next is Order 81-072020, approving the location for the public art piece. I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion, Councilor McLeod.
Point of order. That should have been 4 affirmative votes. It was 3 voted in favor to table it?
3 to table, 2 not to, 1 abstain, so plurality.
Yes.
Plurality.
But it
versus a
should
majority.
be 4 to pass. 4 affirmative votes to pass.
To pass. A plurality doesn't when you have an absent member.
It would be 4.
It has to be a majority of the council, not the majority present.
You would need 4 affirmative votes in order.
Always 4 for a table? Okay, very good then. So I'm going to step back, and that's my fault. I thought you needed a plurality versus a majority on amendments. So that motion to, going back to the previous order, that motion to amend.
But doesn't
failed.
it go tie? If it ends up being 3-3?
It's not a tie.
It's not a tie. It's 3-2-1.
Right, but would the 1 fall into a no?
No, it wouldn't fall into a no. A little unproven territory in this one for me.
It's a different category.
It was an abstention, so
It was an abstention, okay. So the motion is still on the table. We have not voted on the motion. The motion to amend for tabling has failed. So I'll bring back debate. If there's no further debate, then I'll bring it up to a vote.
I have a point for debate. They're almost exactly the same strategy, so it makes no sense to have the Ag Committee work on those strategies to then later approve the same exact action plan with the same strategies. I don't think that I understand the value of not supporting what was a community-engaged process with Auburn residents and Auburn city staff as part of those conversations in the creation of the action plan. And they're the same strategies.
I disagree politely with the good counselor. I don't think we've had enough time to fully digest this and work this. So I would like to table this for 3 months until our Ag Committee can do more work on what they've been charged.
If I could help with the debate, is this about and again, I'm paraphrasing here, trying to find some common ground and so everybody would be happy on this. The problem itself with this, I can see your point about the Ag Committee, Councilor Gary, right? The Ag Committee needs to do some work, and Councilor Boss, your point is very well taken, that a lot of what the charge is in my executive order, that's not been ratified by the council, is duplicative of what's in the local food, local places resolve. I understand that. Is there something else, though, and is there, sometimes in a holistic way, if you look at something at the end result first versus the process going in, and I'm throwing out this for just a question, is there a self-fulfilling prophecy or no? Do you already have a foregone conclusion on the outcome, or is it important to go and work towards an outcome and see what can be turned up? Or is it important to have, the counter argument here is it important to have the end goal done? This is what we need, this is what works, we have to work towards that. And I think if I'm paraphrasing both positions on this. Does that make sense? I don't want to confuse
Put a finer
the issue.
point on it. I mean, can we speak more plainly about what the issues are with the action plan as it stands, rather than having a very vague answer to say, let's have more time, when we've had lots of time with this plan. It is a large plan. However, as a city council, we have a lot of large documents that we review a lot more quickly.
point of order. There was a motion to postpone for 3 months, and I don't know if there was a second, but there shouldn't be any debate on the motion to postpone.
Right.
I thought that was suggested. I did not, I apologize, I didn't pick up that was actual, that you made the motion. I did not pick up on that.
Are you making the motion?
Were you making the motion, or was that part of the dialogue?
Part of the dialogue. I mean, I do ultimately want this tabled, but I'm throwing it out there because there's a lot of issues that I find that we need to work out as a council. Like it was saying, it was a roadmap to bring us forward. And I don't think we're setting a bad standard here by having outside groups just coming forward with a report as well written, pretty much, that this is, by just taking it and putting it in and allowing others or our own, like our strategic plan. We didn't just have the charrettes and all the meetings and just come up with a plan and put it in there. We well thought, worked it out. I think that we should think this out and figure out how we would like to see this implemented. Also, to be truthful, there's not a lot of information from Auburn in this report that this Ag Committee can come up with that we would like to slide it into there to make it more of a well-rounded document.
Slide what into where? Sorry, just looking for clarification.
There's other information, because as you read it, it talks primarily about Lewiston's stuff and all the good stuff that the St. Mary's Nutrition Center is. And I agree with that. But there are also statistics and things that the Auburn's Ag Committee can use to put in there.
Oh, sorry.
I'm using
You
my
gotta
hand.
get a lot, my
I'm sorry, I
peripheral's
forgot
not
I'm
what it
on
used to
Zoom.
be.
I got my hand up.
Yell at me.
Is there, and my question is to Ms. Boss, is there anything that the Ag Committee would add to it other than just going, it's one thing to say, okay, we'll go along with this. Is there anything that, I'm sorry, is there anything that they would add to it to, from our standpoint, improve the study? Or are we just going to go along with this just because it does fit our goal right now? I'm just looking for other things that we could add from our standpoint, just.
I think that the point that Councilor Gray has made is not totally accurate because there is a lot of Auburn data in there. It is a Lewiston and Auburn community plan that was formed with participation by community members from both communities. So I don't think that there's anything that needs to be added at this point. I think it works as a standalone plan. We just ratified the order to say that we are in support of all of these different strategies, and now it's completely hypocritical to look at a Lewiston-Auburn document with the same strategies and say, well, we're going to take 3 months to think about it. So I don't think that there's anything else that needs to be added or that the Ag Committee could add to make it more effective. I think that the elements of it that are aligned with Auburn make sense for us, and we just supported that in the last order that we passed.
Okay.
So why would we have the Ag Committee then? If we're just going to do with this report?
There are a lot of other strategies that we can be working
But
on as a community.
we've got that executive order that says
You mean why would we have an Ag Committee as a group?
Why would we have your task force, this executive order that says you need, as Auburn, we are giving you the job of the Ag Committee as the chair to address this, or if they choose, to implement this executive order. That's what the purpose of the last.
I can't answer, obviously, that question.
But that's what the last order
give,
was, that we're giving you a task.
Not me.
That we're giving the Ag Committee a task.
I gave the Ag Committee a task.
Right. And we
The Ag Committee chose to look at something else outside of the executive orders, which I put through.
Right.
I'm not sure, I didn't watch the meeting, the minutes have not been released. I'm not sure who was there or what the justification was, other than what Councilor Boss is saying, and I have no reason not to, or to doubt what she's saying, of course, that there's overlap. Local Food, Local Places is 109 pages long. It's a hefty document. Very well thought out, lots of community engagement, lots of community involvement, absolutely. I will agree with Councilor Gary, though. I don't think we've had such a finished project come without staff support, i.e. the strategic plan, for adoption in my term as mayor, or terms as mayor. I will say that. I mean, that point is taken. You have a lot more experience at this than I do, of course. But I do see the benefits of LFLP, Local Food, Local Places. I think at the end of the day, we all want to feed people in Auburn. I think the operative word here is Auburn. Yeah. And really in a hyper-focused sense, that's what the Ag Committee's charge is. I don't necessarily think that adopting LFLP negates the need for an agricultural committee at all, because Auburn's problems and our solutions are going to be unique to our community. And maybe, if I could read in between the lines, tell me if I'm wrong. The fact that this is not unique to our community, but a generalization of multiple communities is bothersome to you. I think that's what you said.
So,
Mr. Mayor.
so question I've got then, there's nothing preventing the Ag Committee from using this as a guideline, whether it was we voted in favor of it or we tabled it for 3 to 6 months. They could still use it as a guideline when they're going through it and come back and we could address it at a later date. Is that correct? There's nothing preventing that from the Ag Committee from doing that. Is that correct?
From
Using the information in the study itself, to
Whether
help
we
guide their
adopt it or
decision?
not, right?
No, there's nothing stopping them. No.
So
the issue that we're having is we don't want to support a document that has been created for the broader region as opposed to just for Auburn. Is that what I'm hearing?
I was just
Because
trying
a
to
food-
paraphrase communication.
Well, a
I'll
food
turn that to
system
Councilor Gary.
goes beyond municipal boundaries. A food system is regional. So in order to be effective, we need to be thinking outside of just our own boundaries. And I think to not support a plan that is outside of just our own boundaries is to cut ourselves short and to make the job of the Ag Committee near impossible.
If I can, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, please.
You mentioned staff, and so I just want to make sure that it's clear for the council, too, to know that staff participated in the two-day process. I was there as well as other staff members. One thing that was, we had mapping sheets. We had areas within Auburn. We had areas within Lewiston. We had areas within Androscoggin County. And then we also had areas of New England, identifying, to Councilor Boss's point, that it was a very regional view of identifying opportunities, identifying current resources, and building on that. So I just want to make sure, because you mentioned
No,
staff,
thank
I
you.
want you to know that staff did participate in the process, and we were there for the two-day retreat that was, well, two-day presentation that was conducted.
Good, thank you. Okay.
I just want to make a couple of comments. I read through the whole, I think, 100 pages or 92 pages, whatever it was. A couple of things I saw in there is they're long-term. They've got an idea that they've got property that's got to be purchased by a certain date. I'm sure as this comes forward, if the federal government doesn't give them enough money to purchase it, they'll be coming to the local cities. The towns have very little money, so we'll be supporting all of them areas. I think we have enough on our plate going that we should take care of Auburn. And I read this thing, and every time I read it, it was Lewiston and the City of Auburn, Lewiston and the City of Auburn, Lewiston and the City of Auburn. We had even made points 6 months ago, and I sat here and listened to you. Auburn needs to have its name out there. Auburn needs to be listened to. Auburn needs to be seen. I don't like the idea of us signing on to any more of this St. Mary's Nutrition or any other thing, and we got to battle with them just to grow friggin' gardens on a couple spots in the city of Auburn. This here is 10 times bigger than that, and they're going to have a hell of a lot more power, and I don't want to give our Auburn their power that they want until it's been searched by everyone, and they come to us saying, we agree with this, this is what we like about it, this is way too big of a document done by way too many professional people. In the end, it will cost us, it will not help us.
Any other comments?
It's a deeply disappointing mischaracterization of the work that St. Mary's Nutrition Center does for the community, and there's also no funding attached to this plan.
Not yet.
And that would go in front of our body to make that decision.
Is there any other comment? If not,
Motion to hold this up for 3 months, put it on the back burner until the Ag committees have met and proved to us that this is something that fits into their scheme.
I have a motion to table the local food, local places resolve for a period of 3 months. Do I have a second? No second?
I will second it.
I have a second from Councilor Gary. I ask for a vote. All those in favor of tabling the motion for 3 months, please raise your hand. That's an affirmative, Councilor Carrier. 4. All those not in favor? Okay. The motion to table passes by a vote of 4-2. Okay. Moving on.
Point of order, what would that date be? Would it be the meeting?
Starting within 3 months.
Okay.
Let me, that's a very, very fair question. Let's look at the dates right now.
October 19th.
Can you say again?
October 19th.
October 19th.
Thank you.
Next is Order 81-07202020, approving the location for the public art piece. I'll entertain a motion at this time.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion for Councilor McLeod and a second for Councilor Boss. Open this up to the public for comment. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak? No. We're going to bring it back to the council. Council, just to remind us, this is the artwork bud form. The location will be the Longley Bridge Park, for lack of a better name. I don't think we really have a name for that area, but it's right adjacent, or excuse me, across the street from City Hall here, kitty corner. We have an artist rendition in our packets. It's there. We've talked about this. We've already accepted the piece. I believe the artist is probably, Sabrina Best is here. The artist has probably already been notified and working? Yes? Yeah. Okay, outstanding. Any other comments now that we all brought up to speed on this? No? No,
I just had
Counselor?
a quick question about the rendering. Is that similar to what the final will look like, or will some more of those trees come out so we'd be able to see the falls through that?
As it was mentioned in the information sheet, some of those trees will be, we couldn't do that within the
Okay.
rendering, but it will be.
Technology has its limitations. I thought it was pretty slick how you just made that look like it's always been there.
It looked nice.
No other questions? Ask for a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstained? None being. Passes 6-0. Next, Order 82-07202020. Accepting the fish sculpture as the second public art piece to be placed in Anniversary Park. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to accept.
A motion, Councilor Walker. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second for Councilor Gary. Open this up to the public for comment. Anybody in the public like to comment on the fish? None being, I bring it back to the council. Any councilors like to comment on the large fish? It looks like a smelt. Any of you old Edward Little alumni remember who smelts were? You should know that. None of you do you? Any question? Comments? Yes,
I
Councilor.
just had a question about where the funding comes from to commission the artwork.
Eric's here to speak to that.
Oh, well, there's your intro.
Thank you, Councilor McLeod. We had, in last year's CIP and the previous year's CIP, we had funded just about $1.5 million to construct the overall New Auburn project, including the St. Louis Bell Tower and the landscaping and everything that's getting wrapped up right now. We were successful in getting a grant from the Northern Borders Regional Commission that reimbursed us about $234,000 of that. So that money went back into our CIP line. We plan to use that again for the next phase, but you could choose to use $25,000 of that. $26,000 to $27,000 total with site work if you want that art piece, and the money is there and available for improvements within that park.
I believe accepting this piece of art would by default utilize that money am I correct? We wouldn't have to have a second vote on the appropriation?
No, it would just go to the project.
Okay, very good.
We add it to the project, I think would be fine.
This public art piece, if you all might remember, some of you might know, this was the runner-up. It was a very tough decision. I believe, Ms. Best, it was a split vote, correct? A plurality? I voted for the fish. The fish seemed to be very popular with lots of folks. I was torn. So any other questions or comments about this? Honestly, I think it would be a great addition. If you haven't been to Anniversary Park lately, go. It's unbelievable. Eric, the whole team, just phenomenal job down there, and it's going to be just a jewel for Auburn. So, and there's a nice spot for it there as well. So, any other comments? No?
I'd like
Councilor
to
Walker.
make a comment there that the fish will really bring, I believe, the kids back to the area. We did have the playground area down there that we removed with no thoughts of what we were going to do to replace that. I think this actually will be a great spot for the kids to be able to sit on. It isn't dangerous. It is no higher than this table. And it'll be something that will attract the kids to the area.
Very good. I'd like to bring this to a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Passes 6-0. Thank you very much. Order 83-07-202020, setting the date for the special municipal election to fill the vacant Ward 1 school committee seat for November 3rd, 2020, same day as the presidential. I'll entertain a motion at this time.
So moved.
Second.
Motion from Councilor Carrier, second from Councilor Walker. Public comment? Are there any? None being, I'll bring it back to the council. Council, any debate? No? Very good. I'll ask for a vote. All those in favor? Passes 6-0. Next, we have 6 board and committee appointments. Council may go into executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA, Section 405, 6A, personnel matter. This requires a 3/5 vote, or 3/5 vote, excuse me, of the council members present and voting. The first order is 84-07-202020, reappointing Jeremiah Bartlett to the Complete Streets Committee with a term of expiration of 1/1/2023. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Point of order. Just don't do that again. I got a motion from Councilor Boss, second from Councilor McLeod. Open this up to the public for comment. Any comment? None being. Bring it back to the council. Any debate? I'll ask for a vote. All those in favor? Passes 6-0. Congratulations, Mr. Bartlett. Next, order 85-07-202020, reappointing David Doss to the Complete Streets Committee with a term of expiration of 1/1/2023. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion for Councilor Carrier, a second for Councilor Boss. Open this up to the public for comment. None being. Bring it back. Debate, comment, question? None? Vote? All those in favor? Mr. Doss, congratulations. Approved. Vote 6-0. Next, order 86-07-202020, appointing Stanwick Gray to the Agricultural Committee with a term of expiration of 4/1/2022. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion for Councilor Gary, second for Councilor Boss. Open this up to the public for comment. Any comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council. Council, any comment, debate? None being, I'll ask for a vote. All those in favor? Congratulations, Mr. Gray. Vote 6-0, appointed. Next. Oh, this is going to be a tough one. Order 87-07-202020, appointing Katie Boss to the Agricultural Committee with a term of expiration of 4/1/2023. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion from Councilor McLeod, second by Councilor Carrier. Open this up to the public for comment. Any comment from the public? Bring it back to the council. Any debate from the council? Comment? I think she'd make a wonderful choice. That's my comment. All those in favor? Congratulations. You can vote for yourself. I would actually like it if you did.
You can.
All those in favor? You looked at him for confirmation. If you don't, you're going to be voting against yourself, and that will look bad. All those in favor? Congratulations, Councilor Boss, 6-0. Next, order 88-07-202020, reappointing Chad Roberts to the Lewis and Auburn Transit Committee with a term of expiration of 7/1/2023. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion from Councilor Gary. I got a second from Councilor McLeod. Open this up to the public for comment. No comment. Bring it back to the council. Council debate. None being. Ask for a vote. All those in favor? Approved. Approved by a vote of 6-0. Congratulations, Mr. Roberts. Next, appointing Justin Purvis to the Citizens Advisory Committee with a term of expiration of 6/30/2022. This is order, did I say this? 89-07-202020. Term expiration 6/30/2022. Do I have a motion?
Approved.
A motion from Councilor Milk, second from Councilor Walker. Any comment from the public? None being. Bring back. Any comment or debate from the council? None being. Ask for a vote. All those in favor? Passes. Congratulations, Mr. Purvis. 6-0. Next resolve is 11-07-202020, appointing Phil Kroll and Brian Wood as representative and alternate representative, respectively, to the Maine Service Center Coalition. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Councilor Gary, motion, second on Councilor Milks. And I'll open this up to the public for comment. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the councilors. Any debate? Please, council, debate these two.
I think they make a great addition.
No, it's not a debate, but thank you. Very good. I'm going to ask for a vote. All those in favor? Approved, 6-0. Be careful what you wish for. Going to go into reports. Mayor's report. There is none. Second, City Councilors' reports. We're going to start in reverse order. Councilor Gary.
I already gave mine, thank you.
Councilor Walker.
I just want to report that United New Auburn Association will hold its meeting at Rolly's Diner July 28th, Tuesday night, 6 o'clock, and we will follow all the safety rules. So wear your mask when you show up, please.
Very good. Councilor Carrier.
As I mentioned before, in the school committee, we're having a meeting tomorrow night with a retreat. Wednesday night will be the regular meeting for the school committee. The airport board, they were going great guns out there as far as getting the projects done. There will be a minor setback that could cost us several months. For anybody that wasn't aware of, there was an incident at the airport a week and a half ago, basically a plane crash, and it damaged the new pavement. And they were to the point that they were going to start the milling process. Unfortunately, now we can't start the milling process because we have to bid the contract to replace the pavement. It has to cure for X amount of time, and we're more than likely going to run out of weather before we will get to that point. But they were going great guns. If you haven't been out there, it looks nice. The airport's runways are well marked. The lighting will be coming in, but the old lighting is out there. Very good. So we're almost up to speed with that one. The flight crew space for Life Flight is working. They've got that well on its way to being done. And finally, Sue, we don't have anything left on the appointment committee, do we?
We don't have another meeting scheduled yet,
Okay.
but we'll work on that.
I need to ask, who in their right mind would allow an airplane to land at the airport?
Who do what?
Who would let an airplane land there? It's brand new. It's like driving a new car. You don't do it for the first 2 months, right?
Well, especially not propeller.
Was everybody, more
propeller
importantly
in
though,
first.
I never heard about this in the press. I'm assuming everybody was okay.
They what?
Everybody was okay?
Yes.
Okay, very good.
Unfortunately, the prop into the concrete first just doesn't work
That doesn't
very
work.
well.
Was that reported, though? I didn't know about it or see it or get any...
I was aware of it because I lived there, but
I was not aware of it. I just texted the chief, all crashes have to be reported. So I just texted the chief to see if he was aware of it, but it's nothing that I was made aware of.
Just a fender bender. Very good. We're going to go to Councilor Milks.
Auburn Sewer Trustees, public meeting is tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Auburn Water Trustees meeting is Wednesday at 4 o'clock, public meetings.
Public meetings in person or via Zoom?
In person. And if you want to, so you have to Zoom in. It's a good question. I don't know if we've gotten Zoom done yet.
For public comment?
For public comment or not.
Yeah. Very good, thank you. If you could let us know, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Councilor McLeod. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Milks, is there anything else?
No.
Councilor McLeod?
All right, LATC is hosting a State Transit Technology Summit, July 28th through the 31st. We were selected among a bunch of applicants to have that locally, which is fantastic, so we're going to be participating in that. Great Falls TV, we were recently notified that we were being able to relocate our channels back down to where they should be, and also have the opportunity to possibly have HD signal, so we will look much better on public access. Lewiston and Auburn signed a joint response, sending that to whoever our cable provider is currently. So we're just waiting to hear back from them. They're fighting the legality of it. And lastly, the school building committee didn't necessarily meet, but they did go in front of the planning board. And there'll be another meeting coming up August 3rd.
Very good, thank you. And I believe planning board results were a approval based upon, or provisional on certain changes, and needs to be updated and met. So more to come on that later. Very good. And Councilor Boss.
Thank you. Just an update from the Auburn Public Library Board of Trustees. That meeting was to be held tomorrow, but it is canceled. However, I do have an update from Mamie Nye, the director, who says that she wanted me to stress that the library is open on a limited basis currently, and that's from 10 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. the 6 p.m. starting next week. And they're allowing a limited number of people in the building to get materials, use a computer, or browse in the children's room. And she also wanted me to stress that some activities do require an appointment. So check the website, auburnpubliclibrary.org, to make an appointment for some activities.
Okay. Very good, thank you. I'll turn it over to the city manager at this time for his report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just trying to confirm regarding that upcoming trustee meeting. They are going to be held at the Senior Community Center. There's no reference here that public not to participate, so we'll need to find out how they are doing that, but at least that's where the public meeting will be held.
That is correct, at the senior center. And it's big enough that we could have people there, but I don't know, so I'll have to let you know.
And we'll make sure, we'll help promote that so that the public is aware of how to participate. Obviously, that's tomorrow, so we'll push that out first thing tomorrow. So.
Is your mic actually on, or is it too far away from you?
Might be. I know I mentioned to talk into your mic and I wasn't, so my apologies. The first thing I want to do in the report, in my first report, is obviously to welcome Brian Wood on board and part of our team. So I'm really excited. Brian and I spent some time today reviewing some of what we'll be working on. We are identifying projects that we need to tackle, some that we are already in full swing on. Brian is already getting up to speed on that, will be part of it. We are spending time with directors as new administrators to have conversations about goals, expectations. So we'll be continuing doing that and moving forward. The last item that I want to mention is I had mentioned before about doing a quarterly workshop schedule for you. I'm in the final draft. Actually, this first schedule that I'll put out will be a schedule for the rest of this year. So that way there you'll know all the topics that are coming up in the future. Obviously, I'm sorry, all the ones that we've identified now to have on as a workshop. Obviously, there will be topics that will come up that, just like we do now, that we'll get a little bit of advance notice on that we'll need to add. These are just really some priority items that really align with your goals, topics that you've discussed and had conversations regarding through your strategic plan, your last, the retreat that was held. All those types of topics are what are on here. I'll be emailing that out to you soon. One thing I would like you to be considering, the mayor and I talked about it earlier, is regarding setting dates for your next retreat. And so I think it would be important to have a retreat. Again, I think it went really well. We'll be looking to hold it at the same location. And I think that it would be best if we maybe tried to look at dates at the end of October, 1st of November. And so I'll send out a couple dates and try to get feedback on if those work for everyone. So we'll push that out as soon as we can. So you'll be getting that via email. I'll make sure that's available. And then once at our next meeting, we'll make sure that it's available to the public as well, so they know your work plan and things that you'll be working on. And I'm also working in there tours. It was mentioned about going to Future Guard, so that's on the agenda, on one of the agendas schedule, and I'll be identifying a couple other locations that I think will be important for businesses to have you visit and see some of the work that's being done there and how that's tying into the work that we're doing with staff. That's it for my report.
Very good. Thank you.
I got a question for you. With the CIP, where we passed a heck of a lot of stuff for the CIP this year, can you give us a report on what we exactly passed and what the departments have ordered at this point, so we can have an update on, you know, how much we're spending on these, and are we going to meet our goal come the end of the year?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Next on the agenda, we have executive sessions. We're going to be talking about a labor contract with the police department, MAP command unit, and pursuant to 1 MRSA, section 405. There will not be action to follow, correct?
That's correct.
No action to follow. We will have one more executive session after this. Again, no action will follow, then we're going to go straight into adjournment. So more so for the people at home that might be watching, we'll be going to executive session and staying dark. So, can I get a motion?
Question.
Yes.
Are we still going to do economic development?
No, we've canceled that one.
Okay, just make sure we.
Yep, no, that's been solved and everything's good, but no, thank you. Could I have a motion, please?
So
Enter
moved.
into
Second.
I have a motion from Councilor McLeod, a second from Councilor Walker. All those in favor? We now stand in executive session by vote of 6-0. Just give it. Stand up, stretch.